Chapter 41, 10,000 Swords Mountain. Yi Chun. Zhang Yao. Seeing Yi Chun and Zhang Yao rising from the sword pool, the three-eyed giant ape greeted them with a laugh. Congratulations to the both of you for successfully opening up the Flying Sword Palace. This time you've set a record for the inner mansion. I've never seen anyone open a sword palace upon just entering the sword pool, let alone absorbing so much sword chi spirit liquid. Do you know, if it weren't for the replenishment of sword chi spirit liquid in the pool on the second day, I'm afraid all the spiritual liquid in the lake would have been completely drained by you. Just thinking about the rapidly declining water level in the sword pool as Yi Chan and Zhang Yao absorbed the spiritual liquid, the three-eyed giant ape couldn't help but express his amazement. The sword chi spirit liquid was replenished? I was so immersed in opening the sword palace that I didn't notice it. What about you, Yi Chun? Zhang Yao said, slightly startled. Yi Chun also smiled. I didn't pay attention to that either, just focused on absorbing the sword chi spirit liquid. The sensation of opening up the sword palace acupoint was incredibly marvelous. Both the influx of sword chi spirit liquid into the sword palace and the constantly expanding sword palace world had completely captivated Yi Chun. Likewise, Zhang Yao had not noticed the changes happening outside. How big is your sword palace now? At this moment, the voice of the gigantic feathered sparrow came through. Although the voice was still faint, it had shed some of its detachment, betraying a hint of concern. How big? Yi Chun looked inwardly at his sword palace acupoint and saw that it had already formed a vast space of thousands of zhang in circumference, with the sword chi spirit liquid even forming a huge lake. The space is over 1,000 zhang in length and width, and it's about 3,000 zhang tall, Yi Chun reported to the gigantic feathered sparrow. That big! Although the gigantic feathered sparrow had expected the space within the sword palace acupoints opened by the two to be vast, it was still deeply shocked when Yi Chun described it. What about you? The gigantic feathered sparrow then asked Zhang Yao. Zhang Yao closed her eyes and looked inside the flying sword palace between her eyebrows. To her surprise, she found that her sword palace acupoint had also become about the same size as Yi Chen's without her realizing it. Mine is about the same as Yi Chen's. Senior, we should have met the requirements for this first challenge, right? Zhang Yao asked. Of course. If you couldn't meet the requirements, then no one would have ever completed it. The three-eyed giant ape interjected. The gigantic feathered sparrow, unusually, did not retort but nodded lightly. You've done it. You've done very well in this first challenge of opening the sword palace acupoint. They had done it. They had passed the first challenge of the inner mansion. Hearing the gigantic feathered sparrow announce the result, both Yi Chun and Zhang Yao were excited. This meant that they were one step closer to the flying sword heritage. The flying sword heritage. The thought of Qian Jizi demonstrating the flying sword techniques filled Yi Chun with an intense excitement. He was desperate to enhance his strength. The flying sword heritage, he certainly had to strive for it. The more cards he had up his sleeve, the better. Martial arts cultivation was filled with unpredictable dangers. In his battle with Zhou Hai in the 10,000 Beasts Mountain, Yi Chun came to realize this fact. Zhou Hai, relying on his 7th level of the true Qi realm, had dared to chase after him to kill and seize his treasure. If Yi Chun didn't have the broken sword shard as his trump card, he might have already died at Zhou Hai's hands. If he had really died, even having a heaven-reaching treasure like the primordial star scripture would be useless. Not to mention entering the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode again. To confront the dangers of martial arts cultivation, one must prepare more trump cards, Yi Chun thought. Otherwise, one can only be at the mercy of others. Now Yi Chun faced a major dilemma. Having killed Zhou Hai's father, Zhou Yuntian, a mid-stage Spirit Sea realm powerhouse, would certainly not let him off easily. Yi Chun had anticipated this at the time he killed Zhou Hai. However, if he were to return to that moment, he would still choose to kill Zhou Hai. Zhou Hai, for the sake of a treasure, had pursued him relentlessly. If Yi Chun had spared Zhou Hai, the latter might have devised new and more sinister plans to harm him. Such a treacherous person must be eliminated completely to prevent future troubles. As for the dilemma with Zhou Yuntian, it was because Yi Chun did not have enough strength. If he had been powerful enough, Zhou Hai would not have dared to provoke him, and if he had been more powerful than Zhou Yuntian, then Zhou Yuntian would have been even less likely to do anything to him. In the barbarian wilderness world, martial arts were supreme, strength was king. Everything comes down to strength. Now, faced with the flying sword heritage and the rare opportunity to enhance his strength, how could Yi Chun let it slip away? He, of course, would strive with all his might. Yi Chen's thoughts raced. At this moment, the gigantic feathered sparrow continued to speak to him and Zhang Yao. To open up the flying sword palace and absorb the sword chi spirit liquid into the sword palace is to prepare for the future cultivation of flying swords. The spirit liquid that the two of you have absorbed is enough for cultivating flying swords in the future. However, the more spirit liquid you have absorbed, the more difficult it will be to face the second challenge. Hearing the gigantic feathered sparrow mentioning the second challenge, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao exchanged glances and listened attentively. The second challenge of the inner mansion takes place in 10,000 Swords Mountain. Within 10,000 Swords Mountain, there are more than 10,000 sharp swords. These swords were all used by martial arts experts and bear their sword chi and even their sword intents. Once you start climbing 10,000 Swords Mountain, the sword chi and sword intents from these 10,000 sharp swords will launch attacks at you. The more sword chi spirit liquid you have in your flying sword palace, the larger the number of attacks you will attract. Moreover, the master of the past laid a prohibition within the mountain. As soon as you set foot inside, all your true chi will become immobilized, unable to be used. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether you, Zhang Yao, are in the spirit sea realm or you, Yi Chun, are in the true chi realm. Once you step into 10,000 Swords Mountain, your true chi cultivation level will be of no use. To resist the attacks launched by those 10,000 sharp swords, you can only rely on the sword chi spirit liquid within your flying sword palace and your understanding of sword intents. Previous challengers who absorbed less than 1% of the sword chi spirit liquid that you have couldn't withstand the attacks of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Not a single person was able to climb to the summit. Now that you have absorbed so much more sword chi spirit liquid, the attacks launched at you by 10,000 Swords Mountain will be tens to hundreds of times greater, and the difficulty of reaching the summit and proceeding to the third challenge will also increase by tens to hundreds of times. Hearing what the gigantic feathered sparrow said, both Yi Chun and Zhang Yao's expressions turned grave. Although they were confident, they had to be extremely cautious. The fact that no one had obtained the heritage of Thousand Lotus Cave abode to date showed the difficulty of 10,000 Swords Mountain. And they were to face difficulties tens to hundreds of times greater. They couldn't guarantee their passage either. Seeing their grave expressions, the gigantic feathered sparrow's tone changed slightly. However, you need not worry too much. Even if you cannot reach the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain, your lives won't be in danger. Before you enter 10,000 Swords Mountain, I will give each of you a survival talisman. Should you face an irresistible fatal attack, this talisman will teleport you out of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Of course, if that happens, the Sword Palace acupoint that you opened during the first challenge will be utterly shattered by the sword chi and sword intents of 10,000 Swords Mountain, and you will no longer have the chance to cultivate flying swords. Thus, your challenge within Thousand Lotus Cave abode will also be completely over. Alright, I have told you everything about the second challenge of the inner mansion. If you choose not to climb 10,000 Swords Mountain, I will erase your memories of the challenge and send you out of Thousand Lotus Cave abode. It's up to you to decide whether to go to 10,000 Swords Mountain or not. After the gigantic feathered sparrow finished, it quietly watched Yi Chun and Zhang Yao. Go, of course we will go. Having come this far to the second challenge of the inner mansion, I certainly won't give up, Yi Chun said without hesitation. I'll go too. No matter how dangerous, no matter the difficulties increase 100-fold, I will still choose to brave it. Zhang Yao also spoke firmly. After speaking, they looked at each other and saw encouragement in each other's eyes. They had joined forces to brave the interior mansion, and now they had chosen together to enter 10,000 Swords Mountain. No matter the challenges or difficulties, they still chose to continue the adventure together. Seeing that they did not hesitate to choose to continue the second challenge of the inner mansion, the three-eyed giant ape and the gigantic feathered sparrow both nodded internally. Cultivating in martial arts requires exactly this kind of indomitable spirit. If one shrinks back in fear, it is difficult to achieve greatness. Good. Since that's the case, I will take you into 10,000 Swords Mountain for the second challenge of the inner mansion. I hope you two will be the first ones to overcome the second challenge of the inner mansion. As the gigantic feathered sparrow spoke, its mystical blue wings slowly unfolded, each azure blue feather shining with a captivating luster. It said to Yi Chun and Zhang Yao, "Climb onto my back. There's a grand formation around 10,000 Swords Mountain, which you can't reach on your own. I'll take you into the mountain." "Thank you, Senior." Yi Chun and Zhang Yao bowed respectfully to the gigantic feathered sparrow and leaped onto its back, sitting down cross-legged. Boom! Then, with a flap of its wings, the gigantic feathered sparrow took off with Yi Chun and Zhang Yao, flying towards the towering giant mountain at the deepest part of the inner mansion. The three-eyed giant ape followed closely behind, flying toward the giant mountain. About half an hour into the flight, a torrent of sword chi surged forward. This sword chi immediately made the newly opened flying sword palace within Yi Chun and Zhang Yao rumble, with the sword chi spirit liquid coursing fiercely inside it. From atop the gigantic feathered sparrow, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao looked toward the source of the sword chi and saw a sky-supporting giant mountain rising thousands of feet high. On the mountain, swords of all kinds were densely embedded. Looking up, the number of swords on the mountain obviously exceeded 10,000. Furthermore, the peak of the mountain was shrouded within the clouds. 10,000 Swords Mountain. This was the challenge of the second challenge of the inner mansion, 10,000 Swords Mountain. Chapter 42, Sword Fight, Lian Yu. We're almost at 10,000 Swords Mountain. Once we fly over the barrier of the mountain protection array, we'll be there. As the giant feathered bird spoke, its roughly 600 feet long mystical wings suddenly flapped vigorously, and its speed increased once again. It carried Yi Chun and Zhang Yao straight toward the sky-supporting giant mountain ahead. Whoosh! Whoosh! After flying for a short time, a strange sensation of resistance came over them, and Yi Chun felt as though he were passing through an invisible barrier. Was this the barrier of the mountain protection array that the giant feathered bird mentioned? While Yi Chun was experiencing this sensation, within a few moments, his body suddenly felt lighter, and his entire perception seemed to change abruptly, as if he had entered another world altogether. Around his ears, the sound of countless swords humming could be heard, and within the sword palace acupoint on his forehead, the sword chi spirit liquid furiously surged. Lifting his eyes, the sky-supporting giant mountain was now right in front of him. At that moment, the 6 great vortices of true chi within his body seemed to freeze, ceasing their rotation. Previously, the giant feathered bird had said that upon stepping into 10,000 Swords Mountain, all true chi would solidify and become unusable. It appears that was indeed true. Such a powerful restriction. All the true chi in my spirit sea is bound. Zhang Yao, who was sitting in front of Yi Chun, also let out an exclamation of surprise. Her clear, bright eyes were fixed on the towering 10,000 Swords Mountain in front of them, her delicate face filled with wonder. To restrain true chi with a great array, constructing 10,000 Swords Mountain, was nothing short of a divine feat. As the two of them were feeling the changes in their bodies after entering the range of 10,000 Swords Mountain, the giant feathered bird had already landed at the foot of the sky-supporting giant mountain. They both jumped off the back of the giant feathered bird and looked up at the mountain. The densely packed swords covering the mountain became even clearer, sprawling from the base all the way up into the clouds at the summit. 10,000 Swords Mountain. It truly is the mountain of 10,000 swords. At the base of the giant mountain, not far from where they stood, there was also a huge sword-shaped stone stele. There are characters on that stele. Zhang Yao tugged on Yi Chen's sleeve and pointed her delicate finger toward the sword-shaped stele. Speaking up, Yi Chun had also seen the huge sword-shaped stele, which stood over 200 meters tall. Piercing the sky like a sheathed sword standing upright, It was situated in front of 10,000 Swords Mountain. That is the 10,000 Swords Stele, which records the history of 10,000 Swords Mountain. If you want to enter 10,000 Swords Mountain, you should first take a look at that stele, said the three-eyed giant ape. Took the lead and started walking toward the 10,000 Swords Stele. When the giant feathered bird saw the 10,000 Swords Stele, its divine eyes seemed to dim slightly. Without speaking, it also made its way toward the stele. What's wrong with Senior Feathered Bird? Noticing the suddenly somber expression of the giant feathered bird, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao were puzzled. Both followed behind the three-eyed giant ape and the giant feathered bird, heading toward the 10,000 Swords Stele. There were characters etched on the 10,000 Swords Stele, and upon reaching its base, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao looked toward these characters. The stele read, "On the barbaric wilderness continent, the sword fencing great meat has been passed down through generations. Countless sword cultivators gather, testing their swordsmanship against one another. The losers leave their treasured swords at the venue, while the winners take all the swords with them, earning the highest honor. The two of us, over the course of 3 sword fencing great meets, won a total of 49,368 treasured swords, which we buried within the mountain of the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode. Hence, we named this mountain 10,000 Swords Mountain." Reading the text about the origins of 10,000 Swords Mountain on the stele filled Yi Chun with overwhelming excitement. The sword fencing great meet, where thousands of sword cultivators compete, with winners taking thousands of treasured swords and establishing the 10,000 Swords Mountain. The very thought was thrilling. But I don't know where the 10,000 Swords Conference is held. One day, I too will go see this 10,000 Swords Conference, Yi Chun thought to himself. A sword fighting conference. So the swords on 10,000 Swords Mountain were won from the sword fighting conference. It was only after accompanying my master to participate in a sword fighting conference once that I began to harbor the thought of cultivating swordsmanship. Jiang Yao's delicate face brimmed with excitement. Clearly, she knew the reputation of the sword fighting conference. Jiang Yao, you know about the sword fighting conference? Where is this sword fighting conference held? Yi Chun looked at the spirited girl beside him and asked her. The sword-fighting conference is said to have 4 levels. The True Chi Realm sword-fighting conference is held at a place named Thousand Cliffs Cave in our Heavenly Wind Kingdom's neighboring Heaven Departure Nation. The Spirit Sea Realm sword-fighting conference is held inside the immeasurable mountain of the Great Qian Dynasty. The Rotating Pill Realm sword-fighting conference on the Piaomiao Peak in the middle region of the barbaric wilderness continent. And the highest level, the Heaven Saint Realm sword-fighting conference, is rumored to be held in the mysterious and chaotic Sea of Chaos. With a soft smile, Jiang Yao looked at Yi Chun and shared everything she knew about the sword-fighting conference. The True Chi Realm, Spirit Sea Realm, Rotating Pill Realm, and Heaven Saint Realm are the 4 major realms of cultivation in the barbaric wilderness continent. The 4 levels of the sword-fighting conferences correspond to the 4 major realms, held in 4 different places on the barbaric wilderness continent, attracting elites to converge and compete in swordsmanship. Jiang Yao's words gave Yi Chun further insight into the fascinating world of martial arts on the barbaric wilderness continent. Competing in sword arts, crossing blades with heroes from all corners of the world. This is the martial world that Yi Chun was pursuing. This is the martial world that Yi Chun desired. The 4 major sword-fighting conferences. If I have the chance, I want to experience each and every one of them, Yi Chun thought to himself. He and Jiang Yao continued to look at the inscriptions below the 10,000 Swords stele. It continued to be written on the huge stele. 10,000 Swords Mountain, from bottom to top, conceals swords of different levels. The lower mountain region of 10,000 Swords Mountain berries 38,927 swords, all won from the Thousand Cliffs Cave True Chi Realm sword-fighting conference. These 38,927 treasured swords are all mystic instruments. The middle mountain region of 10,000 Swords Mountain berries 10,432 swords, all won from the immeasurable Mountain Spirit Sea Realm sword-fighting conference, and these 10,432 are all spirit instruments. The upper mountain region of 10,000 Swords Mountain berries 9 swords, all won from the Piaomiao Peak Rotating Pill Realm sword-fighting conference, and these 9 are all treasured instruments. The two of us buried 49,368 swords in 10,000 Swords Mountain to hone our swordsmanship, sword chi, and sword intent, entering the mountain to forge swords and to comprehend the great path of the sword. At the very bottom of the 10,000 sword steel, two names were carved, Thousand Mechanisms and Lian Yu. The entire script on the 10,000 sword steel was flowing and graceful. The bone structure of the characters was sword-like, similar to the handwriting of the name Thousand Mechanisms. But those two characters, Lian Yu, were in another style of handwriting, soft and beautiful, seemingly the work of a woman's hand. Upon seeing the name Lian Yu, the giant feathered sparrow was utterly stunned, murmuring in its heart, "Master! Master! This 10,000 Swords Mountain is a place where two people buried their swords together? Thousand Mechanisms. Lian Yu? Thousand Mechanisms must be the predecessor Qianjizi. But who is Lian Yu?" Both Yi Chun and Jiang Yao were shocked by the text on the 10,000 sword steel. Neither of them had expected to see another name alongside Qianjizi's, appearing in Thousand Lotus Cave Abode. Thousand Lotus Cave Abode, Thousand Mechanisms, Lian Yu. Could it be? A guess faintly formed in Yi Chen's mind. Just then, the three-eyed giant ape sighed deeply. "You two probably don't understand what the Lian Yu represents." Chapter 43. The Divine Sword Seed. "Please enlighten us, ape," Yi Chun requested. Jiang Yao noticed the sorrow in the eyes of the great feathered bird deity. With a heart as clear and pure as her eyes, she felt uneasy at the sight of the deity's somber demeanor. It was likely that the Lian Yu mentioned on the 10,000 sword steel had a significant connection to the great bird. Lian Yu was the old demon bird's master, Heavenly Saint Lian Yu. Just as the Qianji mentioned above is my master, Heavenly Saint Qianji. The three-eyed giant ape had just revealed when the great bird suddenly let out a sharp, piercing cry. "Stop talking! You are not allowed to mention my master's name." All right, I will stop." The three-eyed giant ape let out a wry chuckle. It turned to Yi Chun and Jiang Yao. "If you can climb 10,000 Swords Mountain, once you reach the summit, you will understand everything when you see the invaluable flying sword heritage." Having said this, the three-eyed giant ape sighed deeply. Lian Yu was the master of the great feathered bird? Heavenly Saint Lian Yu, another powerhouse of the Heavenly Saint realm? The hint of a secret revealed by the three-eyed giant ape left Yi Chun and Jiang Yao completely shocked. The Heavenly Saint realm is a realm above the true Qi realm, Spirit Sea realm, and Rotating Pill realm, the legendary supreme sacred realm. Currently, there are no Heavenly Saint realm experts in Heavenly Wind Kingdom. Who would have thought that the founders of 10,000 Swords Mountain were two existences at the level of Heavenly Saints? So the Lian Yu on the 10,000 sword steel is actually the real master of the feathered bird. No wonder when we first met the feathered bird, it did not show much respect for Qianjizi. I thought it was strange for the bird to treat its master with such an attitude. It turns out it has another master. This Heavenly Saint Lian Yu did not appear in the Chen Lian cave mansion, and it is not known where she is now. Seeing the expression of the feathered bird, could it be that Heavenly Saint Lian Yu has? Yi Chun was immensely curious about the Heavenly Saint Lian Yu, who created 10,000 Swords Mountain. But since the great feathered bird did not want the three-eyed giant ape to talk about these things, it was not appropriate for Yi Chun to inquire further. The sharp cry of the great feathered bird that interrupted the three-eyed giant ape led him and Jiang Yao to secretly speculate that it might involve some past events related to their two masters. Yi Chun, Jiang Yao. At this moment, the great feathered bird had calmed its emotions. It looked at Yi Chun and Jiang Yao. "Regarding my master's affairs, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but telling you now is useless. If you can reach the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain and obtain the flying sword heritage, I will tell you then. My master put a great deal of effort into that flying sword heritage. In any case, if you obtain the flying sword heritage, you must not forget my master's dedication." Does the flying sword heritage also involve Heavenly Saint Lian Yu? Yi Chun and Jiang Yao looked at each other. Their curiosity about Heavenly Saint Lian Yu grew even stronger. "All right, we've reached 10,000 Swords Mountain. This second trial you may now begin. The great feathered bird lifted its divine eyes to gaze at 10,000 Swords Mountain, then back to Yi Chun and Zhang Yao. This is the Life Protection Law Badge. Take good care of it. With a flap of its wings, two palm-sized white law badges shot towards Yi Chun and Zhang Yao. The two caught the badges and examined them, noting that the front of each badge was carved with a lotus flower pattern, while the back bore a small character for Lien. Drop a droplet of your blood onto the badge. If you encounter a life-threatening danger on 10,000 Swords Mountain that you cannot withstand, this badge will teleport you directly out of the mountain. Yi Chun and Zhang Yao did as instructed, each dropping a drop of blood onto their badge. The moment their blood touched the badges shone with milky white light. Then, the entire badge transformed into a lotus flower pattern and flew into their wrists. This is miraculous? Could it be that this badge too was crafted by Heavenly Saint Lianyu? Is this a Heavenly Saint's method? Yi Chun gazed at the faint lotus pattern on his wrist, entertaining the thought. Now, prepare to climb the mountain. Regarding 10,000 Swords Mountain, I have already told you a lot at the Lotus Sword Pool. Now, let me tell you the last thing. 10,000 Swords Mountain is immensely dangerous, and it is the second trial of the Inner Mansion. Once you reach the summit, you will be left with only the final trial, Flying Sword Acknowledgement. Whether or not the Flying Sword chooses you isn't about anything else but whether you are destined for it. If you are fated, you won't need anything. The Flying Sword will directly enter your Sword Palace acupoint. If not, it's all in vain, and don't even think about forcefully making the Flying Sword acknowledge you. It's simply impossible. So, the real test for you is actually this second trial, 10,000 Swords Mountain. Remember, in 10,000 Swords Mountain, you only have a month to reach the summit. If you don't make it in a month, you fail. Whoever climbs the mountain within a month will be eligible for the final trial, Flying Sword Acknowledgement. Of course, if both of you reach the summit, that's even better. You'll both have a chance to try and get the Flying Sword to acknowledge you. Remember, you only have 1 month to climb within 10,000 Swords Mountain. The great feathered bird emphasized solemnly in conclusion. 1 month's time. To ascend to the peak of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Yi Chun lifted his head to look at the towering 10,000 Swords Mountain, took a deep breath, and clenched his fist. The summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain, the Flying Sword Heritage. Zhang Yao lifted her delicate face, also gazing at 10,000 Swords Mountain, her face showing a determined look. Let's set off. As the giant feathered bird issued the command, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao exchanged a glance and then stepped boldly into 10,000 Swords Mountain together. Yi Chun and Zhang Yao, the second trial is about to begin. As Yi Chun and Zhang Yao officially entered 10,000 Swords Mountain, at the summit, a figure seated in meditation also opened his eyes. This figure was none other than the projected shadow of Qian Jizi. At this moment, beside Qian Jizi, there were 2 glowing rings emitting bizarre light. Hovering above the rings, there were 2 tiny sword-shaped seeds, one crimson as fire and the other dark blue as water. The odd light of the entire ring was cast by these 2 sword-shaped seeds. Moreover, these 2 sword-shaped seeds were slowly rotating in the void of the rings. With each turn, they radiated countless sword beams that shot toward the entire mountain region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. The entire mountain region, with tens of thousands of treasured swords, vibrated with a buzz under the illumination of these sword beams. These 2 tiny sword-shaped seeds, unfathomably mystical, were clearly no ordinary objects. The seated Qian Jizi looked towards the 2 sword-shaped seeds inside the light rings with a complex gaze. In the end, all his complex expressions dissolved into a murmured whisper of 2 words, Lian Yu. So many swords. Outside of 10,000 Swords Mountain, Yi Chun found the swords on the mountain densely packed. Once inside 10,000 Swords Mountain, this feeling became even more pronounced. Alongside the path they walked, countless treasured swords were inserted between rocks and stones. There were snowy white flexible swords, ink-black great swords, blue slim swords, and dusky wide swords of various kinds, haphazardly stuck everywhere without any order. At the same time, These treasured swords were buzzing as they vibrated, occasionally emitting wisps of sword chi. Inside the whole 10,000 Swords Mountain, one could hear nothing but the sounds of swords singing and the presence of sword chi everywhere. Yi Chun, be careful. As Yi Chun was examining the treasured swords on the mountain, Zhang Yao's cautious voice suddenly reached his ears. At that moment, the treasured swords within a radius of several dozen yards, as if sensing their intrusion, suddenly burst into radiant light and began to swing wildly. Instantly thereafter, a barrage of whoosh 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 sounds erupted as numerous swords, previously embedded in rocks, soared into the air and lunged towards Yi Chun and Zhang Yao as if to strike them down. The suddenly airborne treasured swords amounted to at least 40 or 50, forming two massive waves of treasured swords, shooting towards Yi Chun and Zhang Yao respectively. As over 20 of those treasured swords shot towards Yi Chun, within his sword palace acupoint between his eyebrows where sword chi spirit liquid was already tumultuously stirring, a small stream was seemingly attracted and burst forth as countless sword chi from within the sword palace acupoint. The sword chi spirit liquid shot out from the sword palace acupoint turned into silver-white sword chi, while the myriad of treasured swords flying towards him had sword chi that was inordinately mixed and impure. Yi Chun reacted extremely fast. As the silver sword chi was shot out, his mind moved, and under the control of the storm rain sword intent, in an instant countless strands of sword chi transformed into droplets of sword rain that intercepted the group of treasured swords. Boom! 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 The silver sword rain clashed with the group of treasured swords, and those swords were actually pierced by the silver sword rain and immediately fell to the ground. Then, after vibrating with a buzz on the ground, these treasured swords flew back to their original positions, seemingly subdued, no longer attacking Yi Chun. On the other side, Zhang Yao also began to manipulate the silver sword chi that shot out from her sword palace acupoint. Under her control, that silver sword chi astonishingly transformed into streaks of lightning that likewise knocked down large numbers of treasured swords, completely subduing them. As the girl made her move, her waterfall-like hair flew behind her, and her delicate face, fixed on the sky, looked serious and captivating. After subduing the first wave of attacking treasured swords, she retracted the silver sword chi back into her sword palace acupoint, turned her head, and her starry bright eyes looked towards Yi Chun. When she saw that Yi Chun had already subdued the batch of treasured swords aimed at him, a smile flickered through her eyes. Yi Chun, these treasured swords at the very bottom of 10,000 Swords Mountain were won by Senior Qian Ji and Senior Lian Yu during the True Qi Realm Sword Dueling Tournament. They are all mysterious instruments commonly used by True Qi Realm warriors, quite easy for us to deal with, she said. Mysterious instruments are weapons that can withstand the attacks of True Qi Realm warriors, a quality level higher than ordinary weapons but far inferior to spiritual artifacts, which can withstand the attacks from warriors in the Spirit Sea Realm. True Qi Realm warriors rarely manage to cultivate sword intents. Their treasured swords hidden within 10,000 Swords Mountain only contain faint remnants of sword chi that they had nurtured originally, unable to withstand the onslaught of silver sword chi under Yi Chun and Zhang Yao's control of their sword intents. Zhang Yao, the sword chi spirit liquid we absorbed from the sword pool, seems to be much stronger than the residual sword chi on these treasured swords. It looks like we don't even need to control sword intents. Just relying on the sword chi spirit liquid shot out and wielding sword techniques might be enough to repel these swords, Yi Chun said to Zhang Yao with a smile and a nod. Yes, I have that feeling too. Zhang Yao's eyes shone brightly. I heard from my master that there are different levels of sword chi. The ordinary sword chi comes from sword cultivators using true chi over the years, gradually blending it with their sword techniques, which then imparts some sword chi on the sword. This is all acquired sword chi. There's another type of sword chi that naturally arises from the heavens and earth, or that which naturally resides in spiritual swords, or spawned by nurturing from treasures of the world. Those types of sword chi are innate sword chi. By the looks of it, the sword chi spirit liquid we've drawn from the sword pool is all innate sword chi. This second challenge, 10,000 Swords Mountain, was meant to temper sword chi, sword intents, and sword techniques. After a brief encounter with a group of treasured swords, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao gained a deeper understanding of the sword chi spirit liquid they had absorbed. Let's go. We only have 1 month to climb 10,000 Swords Mountain. The lower part of the mountain region contains mysterious instrument-grade treasured swords used by true Qi realm cultivators. They shouldn't be too difficult. However, the midsection's spiritual artifact-grade swords and the top section's artifact-grade swords will likely not be so easy to contend with. Let's not waste time here. Having taken a look at the surrounding treasured swords, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao continued on their way up. Chapter 44 Affection. The higher they climbed, the stronger the sword attacks from the treasures on 10,000 Swords Mountain became. The swords at the very bottom, with their remaining sword chi mixed and easy to deal with. But after repelling more than 20 waves of sword groups' attacks, the sword chi on the swords stuck along the mountain path began to fuse together. The sword groups attacked in unison, and the might of their combined attack also surged suddenly. As they ascended 10,000 Swords Mountain, the pressure on Zhang Yao and Yi Chun also increased. Relying solely on the sword chi attracted by the sword group's attacks, which automatically flew out from the meridian points in the sword palace to execute swordsmanship, was no longer sufficient to withstand the attacks of the sword groups. Zhang Yao and Yi Chun began to use sword intents, commanding more sword chi and spiritual liquid from within their sword palace meridian points, to overpower the vast sword groups surging to kill. 10,000 Swords Mountain had an arcane formation that imprisoned true chi, preventing them from using the true chi in their chi si. Otherwise, Zhang Yao's early stage in the rotating pill realm alone could have swept the entire lower mountainous area of 10,000 Swords Mountain with her true chi techniques. Now, Zhang Yao and Yi Chun had to rely entirely on the sword chi and spiritual liquid drawn from the sword pool, and their control over sword intents to execute swordsmanship to deal with the attacking sword groups. However, although they could not utilize their full strength, this special trial, designed to suppress the path of the sword, brought great benefits to Zhang Yao and Yi Chun. Originally, of the sword chi and spiritual liquid they had absorbed into their sword palace meridian points, they could only control and use a very small fraction, not even 1/10,000th of the total spiritual liquid, with the vast remainder simply surging freely within the domain of the sword palace. But now, after spending about 4 days, as they were about to finish ascending the lower mountainous area of 10,000 Swords Mountain, the quantity of sword chi and spiritual liquid they could command from their sword palace meridian points using their sword intents had increased by 4 or 5 times, reaching 1,000th of the total spiritual liquid, and the power of their attacks had also soared suddenly. Keep in mind, the vast amount of sword chi and spiritual liquid drawn into their sword palace meridian points were enough to nurture a sacred weapon-level flying sword. If they could control all of it, with the power of these sword chi and spiritual liquid alone, they would be able to kill experts in the rotating pill realm. Now, even though they could only make use of 1,000th of the lake of immense sword chi and spiritual liquid, the might of the sword chi they controlled was equivalent to the strength of a 6th or 7th layer true chi expert. Moreover, after frequently using the sword chi and spiritual liquid, the fraction within their sword palace meridian points that was used regularly began to undergo a transformation, gaining some wondrous innate spirit. The part of the sword chi and spiritual liquid that Yi Chun could manipulate in his sword palace surged and roared, just like countless drops of storm rain converging together. For Zhang Yao, the portion of spiritual liquid she controlled within her sword palace meridian points seemed to be gathering countless streaks of purple lightning. This was precisely because Storm Rain Sword Intent and Purple Lightning Sword Intent were their most commonly used martial techniques. The sword chi and spiritual liquid with innate spirit spread continuously within the domain of the sword palace, allowing them to command even more of it and thereby increasing their combat capacity. This became another killer move at their disposal apart from true chi in their chi si. In fact, Zhang Yao and Yi Chen's previous speculations were not wrong. The sword chi and spiritual liquid they had absorbed was indeed a powerful form of innate sword chi. This innate sword chi was gathered by Heavenly Saint Lian Yu over 80 years from the Taiye Sword Forest of the Great Sword Sect in the Taiye Sword Chi of the Great Dagon Dynasty. This Taiye sword chi was extremely suited for nurturing flying swords, and allowed sword cultivators that integrated their comprehended sword intents to continuously enhance the power of the sword chi. When Heavenly Saint Lian Yu was still in the rotating pill realm, this Taiye sword chi played a large role in enabling her to take the top place in the rotating pill realm sword dueling tournament. Now, while Zhang Yao and Yi Chun just began to harness the Taiye sword chi in their sword palace, The amount of sword chi they could control, and its might were far from matching heavenly Saint Lian Yu's. Yet given time, there was no telling how powerful they would become. 5 days later, Zhang Yao and Yi Chun finally repelled all the sword groups attacking them, completely crossing the lower mountainous region of 10,000 Swords Mountain, stepping into the middle mountainous region filled with spiritual grade swords. The middle mountainous area of 10,000 Swords Mountain. It was already the 18th day since Zhang Yao and Yi Chun set foot on 10,000 Swords Mountain. In the midst of the mountains, the majestic sword chi lingered between heaven and earth. Although the swords here were not as densely inserted as in the lower region, the sword chi they emitted was tens to hundreds of times stronger. The pervasive sword chi even made the mountains appear slightly obscured, and mixed within the thick sword chi were strands of terrifying sword intents that shocked all who sensed them. In a clearing within the great mountains, a supremely beautiful girl sat cross-legged with her eyes closed in cultivation. The girl had brows delicate as the moon and skin fair as snow, her waterfall-like long hair cascading down to her waist. It was none other than Zhang Yao, who was braving 10,000 Swords Mountain. After a long time, the girl's long eyelashes trembled slightly, and her eyes, as dazzling as stars, slowly opened. "I finally comprehended the storm rain sword intent." The girl murmured softly and lifted her beautiful eyes to the boy seated on a large stone about 10 meters away. "Yi Chun is truly remarkable. It took me 8 days to comprehend the storm rain sword intent he passed on to me. Yet he grasped my purple lightning sword intent in just 3 days. Although the storm rain sword intent and the purple lightning sword intent have similarities, being able to comprehend a new set of sword intents so quickly is something I have never seen before in the Taiye sword sect. Now he's directly comprehending the third kind of sword intents, the wind sword intent. If he manages to grasp this sword intent as well, then he will possess 3 major sword intents." In the girl's eyes, looking toward Yi Chun, there was admiration, and even deeper within, a shy affection lay hidden. Zhang Yao, having stepped into the Qi realm at the young age of 16, was acclaimed as the #1 prodigy among the 36 sects of the eastern region of Tianfeng country. Now she found herself admiring a true Qi realm disciple. If this were to spread, all the disciples of the 36 sects would likely not believe it. What they didn't know was this: in 10,000 Swords Mountain, where true Qi was restricted, and one could only rely on their swordsmanship realm, the extraordinarily talented Zhang Yao had been completely impressed by Yi Chun, who possessed even greater comprehension in swordsmanship. If the disciples of the 36 sects knew of Zhang Yao's admiration for Yi Chun, they might just find it unbelievable, but if they knew of that hidden affection in Zhang Yao's eyes when she looked at Yi Chun, the ones secretly in love with her might go completely mad. What they were unaware of was that during these days spent together, facing groups of spiritual swords that ambushed them time and time again, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao, standing side by side and facing the danger, had slowly let each other into their hearts. What they were even less aware of was that 8 days ago, when the two of them entered the last domain of 10,000 Swords Mountain's middle region, and suddenly encountered an attack by powerful swords containing 3 kinds of sword intents, the way Yi Chun fearlessly shielded Zhang Yao had quietly allowed that trace of affection to grow. Zhang Yao would never forget the words Yi Chun said as he held her hand to flee from the pursuing swords. "We're comrades, aren't we? If I don't protect you, who will?" At that moment, Zhang Yao, whose hand was held by a boy for the first time, blushed on her delicate face. The warm and hot feeling penetrated deeply into her heart. Now, having awakened from cultivation, Zhang Yao quietly sat cross-legged, watching the figure on the large stone in the distance, silently waiting. 3 more days passed. It was the 21st day since Zhang Yao and Yi Chun had entered 10,000 Swords Mountain, with 9 days remaining until the end of the mountain's trial. Yi Chun, who was sitting on the large stone, suddenly opened his eyes. The instant he opened his eyes, countless strands of sword chi flew out from the acupoint in the center of his forehead, instantly forming a terrifying sword chi storm. Boom! 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 The rampant sword chi storm swept across and within the blink of an eye enveloped hundreds of yards in every direction. While there was no change in the landscape as the storm passed, all the swords embedded in the rocks within the storm's radius were forcefully lifted, hanging suspended in midair. Only after the storm passed did the swords thunderously fall to the ground, quivering incessantly. The sword chi techniques demonstrated by Yi Chun contained an extremely profound understanding of the essence of wind. Wind sword intent. Yi Chun, have you actually comprehended the wind sword intent? Jiang Yao exclaimed in surprise as she leapt up from her seated position and ran directly towards Yi Chun, who was still seated on the large stone. Just now, she had been within the range of the sword chi storm. Jiang Yao could clearly feel that the terrifying sword chi storm became incredibly gentle as it swept over her, like a caressing breeze. But when it moved towards the swords, it transformed into a violent whirlwind with terrifying power. This was exactly the realm that Yi Chun had described to her in seeking within the wind sword intent. Looking at the beautiful girl with a face full of surprise running toward him, Yi Chun nodded with a smile. Let's go, Jiang Yao. It's time for us to explore the last domain of 10,000 Swords Mountain's middle region. Chapter 45, The Three Swords of the Domain. The final region of the central mountain area of 10,000 Swords Mountain was situated over 2,800 zhang in height, wreathed in clouds and fog. To further ascend, one must traverse this region flanked by valley clouds on both sides. Within this region stood hundreds of treasured swords, blocking the path forward. To continue up the mountain, one had to get past the blockage of these hundreds of treasured swords. Among these hundreds, there were distinctively 3 treasured swords. It snowed atop one, water flowed over another, and the last was even wreathed in flames. Just over 10 days ago, as Yi Chun and Jiang Yao reached this region, it was these 3 treasured swords that launched an attack with the other swords against them. Clearly, these 3 treasured swords had once been wielded by Spirit Sea Realm experts who had grasped sword intents, their formidable sword intents still clinging to them. The mere residual sword intents of these 3 swords, mixed with the sword chi of hundreds of other swords, launched a collective attack that completely defeated Yi Chun and Jiang Yao. At that time, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao realized that the original owners of these 3 swords must have been extraordinary figures even among the Spirit Sea Realm. Otherwise, the sword intents lingering in these swords wouldn't have retained such power over such a long period. After these 3 treasured swords defeated Yi Chun and Jiang Yao, they pursued them relentlessly. Had it not been for Yi Chun's critical use of Gang Yuan True Qi from his Qi Si to briefly obstruct these swords, he and Jiang Yao might have been ambushed and eliminated right there in the region. Gang Yuan True Qi was a special kind of true Qi refined from cultivating the primordial star scriptures, Gang Yuan chapter, significantly stronger than ordinary heaven and earth true Qi. Although the grand formations within 10,000 Swords Mountain could restrain heaven and earth true Qi, they couldn't restrain Yi Chun's Gang Yuan True Qi at all. However, to hone his sword skills and sword intents, Yi Chun initially didn't use Gang Yuan True Qi and only resorted to it when escape was absolutely necessary. Of course, the Gang Yuan True Qi that Yi Chun had cultivated was still too little. It could only briefly hold back the 3 treasured swords, allowing him and Jiang Yao to escape, to face the residual sword intents of the treasured swords head-on. His Gang Yuan True Qi was utterly inadequate. Blocked by the 3 powerful treasured swords and unable to pass through the region they guarded, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao had no choice but to retrace their steps and find a secluded area to continue their cultivation. Their plan was to strengthen themselves sufficiently before challenging this final region of 10,000 Swords Mountain Central area once again. Now, after over 10 days of arduous cultivation and sharing insights into sword intents, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao finally returned to this region. Those 3 swords. Approaching the region, Yi Chun saw from afar the 3 treasured swords containing powerful sword intents among the group of swords. The Snow Glow Sword, the Water Glow Sword, the Fire Glow Sword. These 3 treasured swords stood proudly among the multitude, as if they were the chieftains of this vast array of swords. The previous owners of these 3 swords were at least late-stage experts of the Spirit Sea Realm. Jiang Yao, though her true Qi was restrained, had profound vision and knowledge, and from their last encounter, she recognized the strength of the 3 swords. It's good that it's not their original masters personally wielding these treasured swords. Otherwise, even if we were to advance further, we couldn't break through this group. The residual sword intents and the attack power of this sword group are at the very least at the 9th level of the true Qi realm. In the past, with a flick of her delicate fingers, Zhang Yao could easily have shattered that level of true Qi. But now with her true Qi restrained and unable to use her strongest true Qi techniques, even with the recent assimilation of sword Qi spirit liquid and sword intents, she was still no match for this sword group. We must suppress these 3 sword intent treasured swords to defeat them. Yi Chun, are you really confident? Zhang Yao looked at Yi Chun with her beautiful eyes, asking with some concern. Let's give it a try. Yi Chun, his fighting spirit aflame, looked at the 3 treasured swords. Climbing 10,000 Swords Mountain, they had faced many barriers and even sword intent treasured swords. But Yi Chun and Zhang Yao had always made it through. Now they were blocked by these 3 swords. 3 mere wielderless swords held only by residual intents. Yi Chun found it unacceptable to be stopped by them. Now, after days of intense cultivation, he finally decided to brave the area guarded by the 3 swords. All right, then let's battle this sword group once more. With Yi Chun determined to break through the region guarded by the 3 swords, Zhang Yao naturally joined him without hesitation. The 2 stepped once more into the final region of the central mountain area of 10,000 Swords Mountain. As they set foot in the region, the 3 treasured swords within sensed the intrusion and immediately flew up with a whoosh. Together with the flight of the 3 swords, the hundreds of remaining treasured swords in the region also rose simultaneously. Instantly, a tremendous surge of sword Qi unfurled, and within this vast sword Qi, 3 varieties of sword intents circulated, as hundreds of treasured swords shot straight toward Yi Chun and Zhang Yao. Amid a sky full of treasured swords hurtling towards them at extreme speed, they shot towards Yi Chun and Zhang Yao in an instant. Last time, it was this very move, a sky full of treasured swords, that completely overwhelmed the sword Qi controlled by Yi Chun and Zhang Yao's sword intents. Now, Yi Chun certainly did not want to be defeated by the same move again. As the 3 treasured swords just began to fly, Yi Chen's sword palace acupoint between his eyebrows burst out with countless strands of true Qi, which directly transformed into hundreds of treasured swords, each radiating with the glow of purple lightning, advancing towards the sky filled with swords. As Yi Chun made his move, Zhang Yao also acted simultaneously. She also manipulated sword Qi spirit liquid, forming hundreds of treasured swords that also flickered with the light of purple lightning. Both their moves were directly using purple lightning sword intent to control the sword Qi, to counter the swarm of swords. Boom! 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 In the sky, the hundreds of treasured swords that rose from the realm below clashed directly with the hundreds of treasured swords created by Yi Chun and Zhang Yao through their sword intent-induced sword Qi. This vast region was enveloped in rampaging sword Qi, with every inch within miles churning wildly. Amid the frenzied clashing, the light of snow, water, and fire flickered rapidly on the 3 sword intent treasured swords, and in mere moments, the swarm defended by the 3 swords had gained the upper hand, already about to overwhelm Yi Chun and Zhang Yao's moves. At that moment, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao made another move without holding anything back, releasing all the sword Qi spirit liquid they could control. This time, Zhang Yao unleashed the storm rain sword intent she had just comprehended from Yi Chun. While Yi Chun used the wind sword intent and wind sword skills, he had gleaned from the Shen-level martial skill, wind thunder sword skills. In an instant, fierce gales rose. This wind, evidently much stronger than Zhang Yao's storm rain sword intent, spawned over 300 wind blade swords in an instant, shooting towards the sky full of swords. Among them, more than 200 wind blade swords drifted eerily next to the 3 sword intent treasured swords, and then, those wind blade swords suddenly gained weight, crashing wildly towards the treasured swords. While Yi Chun concentrated his main attack on the 3 sword intent treasured swords, Zhang Yao's attack also converged with Yi Chen's, targeting the sky full of swords. Suddenly, explosive sounds that shook the sky echoed throughout the middle of the 10,000 Swords mountain region. The shock wave from the explosion even uprooted all the trees in this vast region from the ground, sending them flying away before they fell into the cloud seas on either side. And in the explosion, the 3 sword intent treasured swords, which once stood proud among the swarm, were no longer as haughty as they once were. They were struck by the myriad of wind blade swords and flew backward, their lingering sword intents trembling, showing signs of dissipation. Seeing that the three sword intent treasured swords could not hold on much longer, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao certainly would not miss this opportunity to subdue them. With a movement of their sword intents, they pushed their controlled sword chi back against the swarm. Boom! 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 This counterpressure drove all the hundreds of treasured swords deep into the ground, leaving only a small portion of their blades exposed. Not even the three sword intent treasured swords were an exception. When Yi Chun and Zhang Yao retracted their sword chi, none of the treasured swords in this vast region showed any further activity, no longer launching attacks at them. Clearly, after more than 10 days of arduous training, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao's strength had completely subdued this region's swarm of swords. We did it! Seeing the three treasured swords buried deep in the ground, a glint flashed in Yi Chen's eyes. Unlike Zhang Yao, who still had formidable true chi techniques that she couldn't use, now, his sword intents and swordsmanship were his strongest martial skills. And now, these strongest martial skills were already capable of battling without defeat against a sword swarm equivalent to the combat power of the true chi 9th level. Even with Zhang Yao's help, Yi Chun had also not used any true chi techniques. If this had been outside 10,000 Swords Mountain, and not a combat with others, Yi Chen's current strength would have been enough to compete with those cultivators at the true chi 9th level. After entering the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, his true chi realm had risen to the true chi 6th level, and he acquired 2 high-grade Shin-level cultivation techniques, as well as comprehending 2 additional kinds of sword intents, besides the Storm Rain sword intent, namely Purple Lightning sword intent and Wind sword intent. He even stored much sword chi spirit liquid in his Sword Palace acupoint, capable of nurturing flying swords. These techniques, which he hadn't fully cultivated yet, had already multiplied his strength several times over. This exploration of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode had indeed yielded a great harvest. Only the final region of the mountain remains, the upper mountain region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Yi Chun looked up towards the peak of 10,000 Swords Mountain. The summit above was not too far away. According to the records on the 10,000 Swords Stele, the upper mountain region of the mountain conceals only 9 treasured swords. Treasured swords. Those are the weapons used by cultivators in the rotating pill realm, and even just the remnants of these swords are likely to be incredibly formidable. I wonder what kind of challenge this last step will hold. Once we overcome this final hurdle, we will be able to reach the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain. The Flying Sword Heritage. If we can secure the last and most precious Flying Sword Heritage, then this trip to the Thousand Lotus Cave abode will truly be without regrets. Chapter 46. The Summit. Next to Yi Chun, Zhang Yao's clear and beautiful eyes also sparkled with excitement. Yi Chun, you did it. You really subdued the 3 sword intent treasured swords. These past few days, she had watched Yi Chun relentlessly train every day without rest, without ever slackening, all in order to overcome this most difficult of regions. Now, Yi Chun had finally achieved it. He had finally subdued the 3 fiercest sword intent treasured swords, and defeated every sword in this toughest region. How could Zhang Yao not be thrilled? How could it not move her deeply? Looking at the heart-stirringly beautiful girl beside him, and into her clear eyes, Yi Chun was slightly mesmerized.
Yi Chun.
Being stared at like this by Yi Chun, a blush crept onto Zhang Yao's pretty face. Zhang Yao, thank you. Thank you for your trust in me. Yi Chun looked at the delicate face before him, recalling how the girl had chosen to face the challenge with him without a moment's hesitation when he decided to tackle the area defended by the 3 swords, filling his heart with warmth. We did it. We subdued these treasured swords together. We overcame this toughest region together. Yes, together. Zhang Yao's eyes also softened with a touch of a smile. Seeing the soft smile in Zhang Yao's eyes, Yi Chun couldn't help but feel a stir in his heart, and on impulse, he reached out and grasped the girl's slim hand. The softness and warmth he felt made him reluctant to let go. This was the second time he had held Zhang Yao's hand, the first being when he led her away from the danger of being pursued by a swarm of swords. Now, it was a completely ordinary moment with a completely different meaning. Suddenly having her hand taken by Yi Chun, Jiang Yao's cheeks flushed slightly. She struggled gently, but, seeing Yi Chun hold even tighter, her heart began to race. She turned her head away, revealing her equally blushing, snow-white neck. Her small hand no longer resisted and allowed Yi Chun to hold it. Although she had cultivated to the spirit sea realm, 17-year-old Jiang Yao was still innocent when it came to feelings, having never been this close with any man before. She felt both shy and happy, feelings she had never experienced in her 17 years, now only surfacing with Yi Chun. Seeing the somewhat bashful girl and her gentle gestures, how could Yi Chun not understand their meaning, which eased his mind, which had been tense until now. He was suddenly filled with boundless grand ambition. Let's go, Jiang Yao. Let's tackle the last region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Okay. Jiang Yao softly agreed. The two, hand in hand, continued their ascent up 10,000 Swords Mountain. At the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain, Chen Jizi sat cross-legged looking down the mountain. When he saw Yi Chun and Jiang Yao walking hand in hand, an image of a woman crossed his mind. This woman loved to wear a light yellow dress, always riding a mystical ice-blue feathered bird, and always enjoyed, like Yi Chun and Jiang Yao, adventuring side by side with him. Lian Yu, I failed to protect you back then. Hopefully, Yi Chun can protect Jiang Yao. This last stretch of the mountain is the true test, a test of one's inner heart. As Chen Jizi spoke, he pointed a finger towards one of the two light circles beside him. At the floating, fiery, sword-shaped form seed within the circle, the crimson seed immediately emitted a bizarre fiery glow, propelling it downwards with great vigor. Not far below the summit, a row of 9 treasured swords stood upright, and as the fiery red glow from the crimson seed reached them, all 9 swords began to sparkle simultaneously. Endless streams of fire raged like a waterfall, cascading down 10,000 Swords Mountain, turning the entire upper region into an ocean of fiery cascades. The final test. At the base of the immense 10,000 Swords Mountain, the three-eyed giant ape and the giant feathered bird both looked up towards the gigantic peak. When they saw that the uppermost region of the mountain had been completely engulfed by the fiery waterfall, both the mighty magical creatures fell silent. Can Yi Chun and Jiang Yao pass this test of the heart? Previously, pairs who journeyed together had reached this last stage, only to crumble and fall apart at the final moment. What will happen to Yi Chun and Jiang Yao? If they fail the test of the heart, no matter how strong they are, they cannot inherit the flying swords of the two masters, nor do they deserve the invaluable legacy of the flying swords. We hope they won't disappoint us. It's so hot, unbearably hot, as if everything could be incinerated. The higher Yi Chun and Jiang Yao climbed, the more they felt a weighty pressure they could hardly breathe under. Especially Jiang Yao. She felt as though this heat wave was specifically targeting her, to the point where even the sword chi spirit liquid in her sword palace acupoint ceased to leap. When the two reached the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain and saw the whole area covered with the glow of the fiery waterfall, barely making out the row of 9 treasured swords above, they knew that this waterfall of fire must be the phenomenon induced by those legendary 9 treasured weapons. Is this the test at the topmost area of 10,000 Swords Mountain? Yi Chun observed the fiery waterfall of light that spanned a tremendous length of over 1,000 yards from bottom to top. Crossing this vast fiery cascade would mean reaching the true summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Jiang Yao, how are you feeling? At this moment, Jiang Yao's small, snow-white face was engulfed in crimson. Not the blush of shyness, but one brought on by the oppressive heat that made it hard to breathe. Jiang Yao's slender eyebrows, curved like crescent moons, were tightly knitted together, and her delicate face showed signs of pain. Chapter 47. Looking at the girl's appearance, Yi Chun also felt some heartache. He sensed that the closer they got to the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain, the more Jiang Yao seemed unable to bear it, as if there was something in the upper region that was restraining her. Yi Chun's large hand tightly held onto Jiang Yao, while the sword chi spirit liquid from his sword palace acupoint shot out, forming a protective barrier around Jiang Yao that slightly alleviated some of the heavy pressure she was under. Yi Chun, It's so strange. Why does this top area suppress me like this? Zhang Yao's brow furrowed tightly. She didn't want to hold Yi Chen back, nor did she want to feel this peculiar sensation. Perhaps it's because of those 9 treasure instruments. Could it be that the sword intents on those instruments are restraining your sword chi spirit liquid? Yi Chen was also somewhat baffled. Let's go, Zhang Yao. No matter how difficult it is, I will protect you, and we will move forward together. Yi Chen held Zhang Yao's hand even tighter, as he would not let go of her hand at this critical moment. Boom! Boom! Together, they flew into the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain, entering the midst of the fire waterfall's glow. As soon as they entered the fire waterfall's glow, Zhang Yao let out a groan, as the fire waterfall's light that swept toward her even made the protective barrier formed by Yi Chen tremble intensely. Yi Chen's heart tightened, and he summoned more sword chi spirit liquid, thickening the protective barrier around Zhang Yao's body a few more layers. In this manner, the two slowly climbed towards the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. After 1 day's time, when they had painstakingly climbed more than 100 zhang, the 9 treasured swords at the very top of the mountain suddenly emitted a great red glow. The red light struck Zhang Yao beside Yi Chen, causing her to fall down, and Yi Chen, who refused to release her hand, fell as well. Boom! Boom! The two of them fell back to the place they just entered, the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. All of that day's climbing was utterly wasted. Zhang Yao bit her red lips, and looking up toward the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain, a resolute light flashed in her beautiful eyes. Yi Chen, leave me be. It seems these 9 treasure instruments are targeting me, and I'm probably not destined for the flying sword heritage. You go up the mountain on your own. With me, you simply cannot reach the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Zhang Yao. Yi Chen's eyes stared intently into Zhang Yao's, staring so hard that she didn't dare to meet his gaze. Don't talk like that. We agreed to climb the mountain together. Let's go. This is just the beginning. The two of us are not people who give up easily. Yi Chen pulled, enveloping Zhang Yao with all the sword chi spirit liquid he could muster, and holding her hand, once more charged into the heat of the fire waterfall's glow. This time, the two of them climbed continuously until they were 300 zhang high, leaving only around 800 zhang from the summit. Boom! Boom! A terrifying cascade of fire waterfall glow surged toward them forcefully once again, knocking them back to their starting point. Yi Chen clenched his teeth, and without waiting for Zhang Yao to speak, pulled her into the midst of the fire waterfall's glow again. Thus, he and Zhang Yao spent 8 days' time, charging into the fire waterfall over 100 times. Yet they were unable to cross the final region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Just 1 more day until the month-long trial at 10,000 Swords Mountain would end. Only 1 last day remained. If they couldn't climb to the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain in that time, both Yi Chen and Zhang Yao would be eliminated in this stage of the trial. At this moment, having been washed down once more, Zhang Yao shook off Yi Chen's hand and ran down the mountain without looking back. Yi Chen, leave me alone. There's only 1 day left. I don't want to be a burden on you. I've already reached the Spirit Sea Realm, and my primary combat skills also have nothing to do with the cultivation of the sword. Even if I don't receive the Flying Sword heritage, it's fine. But it's different for you. Zhang Yao's voice carried a sobbing tone. She wanted to reach the summit with Yi Chen, but this final segment of 10,000 Swords Mountain just wouldn't let her pass. She didn't want to weigh Yi Chen down. Every time Yi Chen insisted on pulling her up the mountain, only to be cruelly knocked back down, it hurt her more than falling herself. It's the last day. Without me, Yi Chen still has hope of reaching the summit. I hope he can successfully obtain the Flying Sword heritage. Zhang Yao thought as she ran. Suddenly feeling light, she was scooped up around the waist. The person who held her, with a breath she was utterly familiar with, that steadfast gaze, that handsome face, who could it be if not Yi Chen? Zhang Yao, being able to meet you inside the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode has already satisfied me, Yi Chen said. My gains have been many indeed. As for the Flying Sword heritage, let's just leave it aside. If you want to go, I'll accompany you. Yi Chen gave a light smile, exuding an indescribable carefreeness. What did it matter if he didn't get the flying sword heritage? Having Zhang Yao was enough. In Yi Chen's heart, Zhang Yao, with whom he had spent these days, had become much more important than the flying sword heritage. How could he possibly leave Zhang Yao behind for the sake of the flying sword heritage? Yi Chen. Wrapped in Yi Chen's embrace around the waist, Zhang Yao's entire delicate body softened, her head spinning slightly. However, thinking of the imminent end of the 10,000 Swords Mountain trial, she snapped back to her senses. No, you can't give up. That flying sword heritage was left by a heavenly Saint Realm powerhouse. Once you obtain it, it will definitely be of great use. Don't worry about me. Zhang Yao struggled in Yi Chen's arms. I don't have to give up, but you have to promise me to try one last day with me, Yi Chen said, looking into her eyes and smiling. If on this last day we still can't make it, then it means we're truly not destined for the flying sword heritage, and then we can leave. Zhang Yao looked deeply into Yi Chen's bright eyes and finally nodded. From Yi Chen's gaze, she understood that if she didn't agree, he might truly give up this last effort. You put me down. I agree, okay? Zhang Yao's face blushed, and she started to struggle again in Yi Chen's arms. This time, Yi Chen let out a hearty laugh and set the girl down. Then, he took Zhang Yao's hand and headed towards the upper reaches of 10,000 Swords Mountain once again. The two re-entered the brilliance of the fire waterfalls at the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Climbing, falling, climbing, falling again. When the final day was about to end, when Zhang Yao sighed faintly, her gaze filled with affection as she looked at Yi Chen, and as Yi Chen shook his head helplessly, two awe-inspiring luminosities suddenly burst forth from the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain. These two awe-inspiring luminosities, one red and one blue, poured down from the summit in a frenzy. The 9 treasure instruments, the treasured swords, all trembled violently under the downpour of these two lights. Where the two luminosities swept across, all the fire waterfalls in the upper region of 10,000 Swords Mountain extinguished, and then the lights shot into the Sword Palace acupoints between the brows of Yi Chen and Zhang Yao. As the crimson light entered Yi Chen's Sword Palace, a familiar and intimate feeling overwhelmed him. The fatigue from the past 9 days dissipated under the invasion of this light. And Zhang Yao, who had been gasping for breath under the oppression of the fire waterfall's light, felt her whole body lighten as the blue light entered her Sword Palace acupoint, all the suppressed feelings vanishing. The sword chi spirit liquid within her Sword Palace acupoint surged joyfully again. What's happening? Yi Chen and Zhang Yao both looked towards the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Then, they saw 2 small sword-shaped seeds, one red and one blue, suspended in the lights halfway up the sky, slowly rotating. The 2 small sword-shaped seeds, even smaller than a fingernail, yet the light they emitted enabled Yi Chen and Zhang Yao, who were more than 1,000 zhang away, to see them clearly. The flying sword heritage? Could it be? This is the flying sword heritage that Senior Qian Ji spoke of? Yi Chen and Zhang Yao thought this as they looked at the 2 small sword-shaped seeds. Without any hesitation, they took hands and rushed toward the peak of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Without the obstructing light of the fire waterfalls, they moved quickly, even faster than at the lowest region of 10,000 Swords Mountain. 1,000 zhang, 500 zhang, 300 zhang, 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. Boom! In the final moment, the 2 of them together reached the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain simultaneously. The second trial of 10,000 Swords Mountain was finally and completely cleared. Chapter 48 Secrets. At the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain, there was a flat area spanning hundreds of zhang. It was as if a peerless powerhouse had leveled the peak with a single strike, leaving it flawlessly flat. Here was the site of the third trial of the 1,000 Lotus Cave Abode's inner sanctum, the final challenge of the flying sword heritage. After Lotus Sword Pool, where they absorbed sword chi spirit liquid to create the Sword Palace acupoints, and after climbing the 3 massive regions of 10,000 Swords Mountain, withstanding the assault of countless treasured swords, Yi Chen and Zhang Yao, braving untold hardships, had finally succeeded in reaching this place. After the bitterness comes the sweetness. Now only the last step, flying sword acknowledgement, remained for them. Upon reaching the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao immediately laid eyes on the seated phantom clone of Qian Jizi, and they noticed the two glowing rings beside him, along with the two miraculous sword-shaped seeds suspended in midair. Senior Qian Jizi. Senior. Yi Chun and Zhang Yao greeted Qian Jizi with respectful bows. Splits from the inner sanctum at the beginning, they were finally seeing this heavenly saint realm powerhouse's phantom clone once again.
Yi Chun, Zhang Yao.
The phantom clone of Qian Jizi also looked towards them, giving a slight nod and a smile. You indeed did not disappoint me. You indeed succeeded in ascending the summit of 10,000 Swords Mountain. Over 300 years have passed, and you are the first pair to succeed in reaching the top of this mountain. As Qian Jizi spoke, he turned to Yi Chun. Yi Chun, during the external sanctum's trials, you caught my attention. At the fire rune chart spot, you battled the fire-armored warrior, showcasing your fighting strength. At the mirror light spirit wall, you comprehended the wind-thunder mood. Your quick-wittedness surprises me. During the fiery trial of intention, you continuously forged your willpower, successfully giving birth to the fire lotus law pattern. And you, Zhang Yao, Qian Jizi then turned to Zhang Yao. You were merely 17 when you stepped into the spirit sea realm, unparalleled in your natural talent for qi cultivation, and likewise extraordinary in sword cultivation. 3 years ago, when you tested in the fire and water Dao, passed the external sanctum's 3 challenges with the most outstanding achievements, I already anticipated that you would enter the inner sanctum with a partner. Hearing this, Zhang Yao's beautiful eyes couldn't help but turn to Yi Chun. She remembered that at the time, she was also looking forward to finding a partner to enter the inner sanctum, and in the end, she waited for Yi Chun. Seeing Zhang Yao's gesture, Qian Jizi smiled slightly. As a result, you and the equally outstanding Yi Chun made your way into the inner sanctum together. At that time, I predicted that the two of you were very likely to be the first pair to break through to the 3rd challenge of the inner sanctum, and to think my guess actually became reality. Indeed, it had become reality. Standing at the site of the 3rd challenge, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao were touched. Having undergone the trials of 10,000 Swords Mountain, especially the last 3-sword guardianship area and the upper mountain's fiery waterfall light challenges, they fully realized the difficulty of passing 10,000 Swords Mountain's trials. Fortunately, they didn't give up and persevered to the end. Yi Chun and Zhang Yao exchanged glances, and a bit of delight and pride flashed in their eyes. Now, having reached the 3rd challenge, all that's left is flying sword acknowledgement, the final step. You must be wondering what the flying swords you'll acknowledge as your own are like, right? Qian Jizi asked the two with a smile. The flying swords they were to acknowledge? Qian Jizi's words caused both Yi Chun and Zhang Yao to shift their gaze to his side, looking at the sword-shaped seeds suspended in the glowing rings. Senior, are these 2 sword-shaped seeds the flying swords we are to acknowledge as our own? Yi Chun asked Qian Jizi. These 2 sword-shaped seeds, one crimson-red as fire, and the other deep blue as water, emanated a mystical radiance as they slowly spun, highlighting their unparalleled preciousness. Watching these 2 sword-shaped seeds, Yi Chun faintly thought of the assignment of the fire and water Dao. The fire and water Dao, the sword-shaped seeds of water and fire. Could it be that the reason for the 2 separate trials was because of this pair of sword-shaped seeds? At this moment, Zhang Yao's beautiful eyes were also fixated on the 2 sword-shaped seeds, particularly the deep blue one that resembled water. Previously, at the final moments of the 10,000 Swords Mountain trials, a deep blue radiance shot into her sword palace acupoint, leading to the disappearance of the oppressive feeling within her. Could it be that deep blue seed that emitted that burst of blue light? The girl harbored this guess in her heart. Seeing Yi Chun and Zhang Yao both focusing on the sword-shaped seeds beside him, Qian Jizi did not hesitate to nod and confirm, "Yes, the flying swords you are to acknowledge are these 2. These 2 flying swords, one named Crimson Fire and the other Ghostly Water, are incredible treasures born in the Sea God Palace of the Sea of Chaos, a pair of twin flying swords naturally formed by heaven and earth. Flying sword, crimson fire. Flying sword, ghostly water. Yichun and Zhongyao, hearing Qian Jizi's words and looking at the flying swords the size of seeds, were deeply stirred in their hearts. They had braved the trials of Thousand Lotus Cave abode for so long, for these tiny twin flying swords. So it was these, heaven and earth-born treasures, a pair of twin flying swords, born from the sea god palace in the Sea of Chaos, a place they had never visited, and now here within the Thousand Lotus Cave abode of Heavenly Wind Kingdom, right before their very eyes. The thought alone filled them with wonder. Since you have come here and have seen this pair of twin swords, it's time to tell you everything about the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. The gaze of Qian Jizi also fell upon the two flying sword seeds. His eyes filled with memories, and even more so with sorrow. Please speak, Senior. Yichun looked towards Qian Jizi. Is it related to that heavenly Saint Lianyu? Zhang Yao asked cautiously. Ever since the two of them had entered the inner abode, whether it was the strange expression of the giant bird or the words Lianyu, they saw on the 10,000 sword stele at the base of 10,000 Swords Mountain, or even this pair of peculiar twin swords, they felt there must be a story involving both Heavenly Saint Lianyu and Heavenly Saint Qianji. Lianyu. Hearing Zhang Yao mention that name, Qian Jizi let out a long sigh and nodded. Indeed, it has to do with Lianyu. Yichun and Zhang Yao listened intently. Qian Jizi sighed wistfully. At the 10,000 Swords stele, you must have seen that 10,000 Swords Mountain was actually established by both my original body and Lianyu. Yichun and Zhang Yao both nodded their heads. Lianyu and I were originally a pair of martial siblings. I came from the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, and she came from a great dynasty in the central region of the barbaric wilderness continent. Qian Jizi spoke slowly. Both of us followed the path of sword cultivation. We met at the Spirit Sea Realm Swordsmanship Contest on Immeasurable Mountain. That year, I won first place and Lianyu took second, and from then on, we got to know each other. Later, we joined the Sword Cultivation Tai sect together. The two of us cultivated together, wandering the barbaric wilderness continent, our sword cultivation growing ever higher, and our relationship growing increasingly close. Qian Jizi lost himself in memories. As if recalling those beautiful days, a slight smile appeared on his face. Lianyu was stubborn to the core, refusing to accept defeat. After losing to me at the Spirit Sea Realm Swordsmanship Contest on Immeasurable Mountain, she pulled me into participating in the Rotating Pill Realm Swordsmanship Contest on Ethereal Peak. Once we entered the Rotating Pill Realm, he continued. At that time, I didn't want to compete with her, so I lost to her on purpose. However, after that, Lianyu became unhappy, claiming that I hadn't used my real abilities to duel with her on the path of the sword. To appease her, I promised that once we stepped into the Heavenly Saint Realm, we would have a true battle at the Heavenly Saint Realm Swordsmanship Contest. Little did I expect that it would be during that battle at the Swordsmanship Contest in the Sea of Chaos that, as he spoke, Qian Jizi's voice began to tremble. Yichun and Zhang Yao's hearts clenched, knowing that it was probably at this Heavenly Saint Realm Swordsmanship Contest where something went terribly wrong. Qian Jizi took a deep breath and continued. In that battle, Lianyu and I eventually became the final two contenders. And between Lianyu and me, we truly went all out in a contest of swordsmanship. Lianyu was incredible. In the end, she defeated me and took first place at the Heavenly Saint Realm Swordsmanship Contest. As for the first place prize, it was the twin flying swords provided by the Sea God Palace, which are Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water in front of you, he explained. Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water, the pair of twin flying swords, were actually the prize for the Heavenly Saint Realm Swordsmanship Contest. Yichun and Zhang Yao hadn't expected this at all. Originally, Lianyu won first place and we received the first place reward. Everything was fine. But on our way back, we were ambushed by three powerful Heavenly Saint Realm martial artists. At this point, a deep hatred shone in Qian Jizi's eyes. On any other day, those three Heavenly Saint Realm martial artists wouldn't have been a threat to us. Lianyu and I, even amongst those in the Heavenly Saint Realm, were among the top rankers. But because of the injuries we sustained in our final battle, we were weakened, he recounted. Those three were our friends. Yet they betrayed us at such a critical moment and attacked us directly. Chen Jizi seethed. In the end, although we managed to kill two of the treacherous three and scared the third one away, Lian Yu, she fell into a perpetual coma in the fight. It was to protect me that she self-detonated her life-bound flying sword palace. Since then, she has been in an eternal sleep, he lamented. Lian Yu's injuries were because of me, her final act of self-detonating the sword palace and falling into a coma. Also because of me. If I hadn't been so set on competing with her, none of this would have happened. By the end, Chen Jizi's voice had become hoarse, filled with unbearable regret. Senior Chen Ji. Yichun and Zhang Yao both felt saddened by the story, with tears even starting to form in Zhang Yao's clear eyes. She could feel the kind of love that Lian Yu had for Heavenly Saint Chen Ji. This isn't your fault, Senior Chen Ji, Zhang Yao gently said. If Heavenly Saint Lian Yu made that choice, she surely wouldn't have any regrets. The ones to blame are those three betraying Heavenly Saint Realm martial artists. If not for them, none of this would have happened, Yichun added. Those scoundrels. Upon Yichun bringing up those three, Chen Jizi was awakened from his regret by righteous anger. Two of them are already dead. It was the third one who got away. Continuing, Chen Jizi turned his gaze to Yichun and Zhang Yao. After Lian Yu's sword palace was shattered, there was no longer any possibility for her to cultivate flying swords. My original body also refuses to use the twin swords that bring back painful memories. So the swords were hidden within the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. The trial of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode was initiated by my original body to find a new master for the Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water twin swords, and also for another reason. That is, if one day, the owner of Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water becomes powerful enough to deal with that runaway scoundrel, then they must capture him and bring him back to the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. He mustn't be allowed to continue roaming free, harming others. That is the sole requirement of the person who inherits the Flying Sword heritage. Chapter 49 Flying Sword. Flying Sword. Originally, my main body decided to seek revenge personally, but he left early to save Lian Yu and has already gone to the minor spirit realm. Even if he successfully finds the secret treasure to awaken Lian Yu, he'll have to wait at least another 3,000 years for the minor spirit realm to open again before he can come out. Yichun, Zhang Yao, if you can successfully make the flying swords acknowledge you as their masters, can you do what I have just mentioned as the sole requirement for the person who obtains the flying sword heritage? The avatar of Chen Jizi gazed at Yichun and Zhang Yao. Yichun and Zhang Yao exchanged glances, and their eyes said it all. Senior Chen Jizi, we accept this condition. Please inform us of the name and appearance of the person who fled, not to mention the tremendous benefits they had received from the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. Even if they hadn't gained anything, knowing the past of Heavenly Saint Lian Yu and Heavenly Saint Chen Ji made them feel profound hatred toward the person who had betrayed and fled. If they had the strength to capture him, of course, they would bring him back to the Thousand Lotus Cave abode for Chen Jizi to deal with. Good. There's no rush to inform you about that person's details. It is not too late to talk about it after you have successfully made the flying swords acknowledge you as masters. Seeing Yichun and Zhang Yao agree without hesitation lightened Chen Jizi's sorrowful mood somewhat. I set up the waterfall of radiant fire at the highest area of 10,000 Swords Mountain to push you to the limit, all to test your characters. In times of great difficulty, in the last moment, you did not abandon each other but chose to stick together. Only those with such character deserve the opportunity to have the flying swords acknowledge them as masters. Only such flying sword masters deserve to be entrusted with that sole requirement. Now begin the true final trial, the flying sword acknowledgement. It turns out the waterfall of radiant fire was deliberately set up by Chen Jizi to test their character. Upon hearing Chen Jizi's words, Yichun and Zhang Yao finally understood why the radiant fire waterfall was so difficult to overcome, and why it had suddenly disappeared. And when Chen Jizi mentioned starting the flying sword acknowledgement, Both of them were invigorated at the same time. It was about to start. The flying sword acknowledgement was finally about to begin. Yichun and Zhongyao both turned their gazes towards the two tiny, sword-shaped seeds floating within the light ring. These crimson fire and ghostly water are twin swords, one male and one female, born together, mutually generating and accompanying each other. Yichun, you will acknowledge the crimson fire flying sword, while Zhongyao, you will acknowledge the ghostly water flying sword. Above the flying swords, there are 3 prohibitions. Only by unraveling these 3 prohibitions can you begin to make the flying swords acknowledge you as masters. Now, I will teach you the secret spells to unlock the prohibitions on the crimson fire and ghostly water flying swords. Listen carefully. As Qian Jizi spoke, the incantations to unlock the prohibitions on the flying swords flew directly into the minds of Yichun and Zhongyao. They closed their eyes, recited the spell 3 times, clearly memorizing every step, and then opened their eyes. Sit cross-legged one zhang opposite the flying swords, and begin to make them acknowledge you as masters. Yichun did as he was told, sitting cross-legged opposite the crimson fire flying sword, while Zhongyao sat opposite the ghostly water flying sword. They gazed at the flying swords they were about to make acknowledge them, their minds gradually calming down as they entered into the preparatory state of regulating their qi and nurturing their spirits before unlocking the prohibitions. After a short while, Yichun and Zhongyao's eyes snapped open, and they began to cast spells with their hands simultaneously. Hum! Hum! At the moment they cast their spells, the crimson fire and ghostly water swords started to tremble violently. On the tiny sword-shaped seeds, numerous wondrous patterns began to move, and 3 layers of divine light spread out like ripples. These 3 layers of divine light were the 3 prohibitions for acknowledging the flying swords as masters. The time to unlock the prohibitions had come. Yichun was quietly staring at the crimson fire, flying sword when he pointed his finger, and a drop of essence blood flew straight out. The first prohibition, essence blood prohibition. Whoosh! This drop of essence blood flew straight towards the crimson fire, and at the perfect moment when the 3 layers of divine light on the sword rippled to a peculiar position, the essence blood directly entered crimson fire. Hum! Upon contact with the crimson fire, the essence blood completely enveloped the first layer of divine light. In an instant, the entire crimson fire flying sword vibrated wildly, bursting with brilliance, while Yichun's hand movements continued, beginning to fully deploy the spell to unlock the first prohibition. Hum! 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 After a few moments, the wildly vibrating crimson fire flying sword suddenly stopped, hovering in mid-air, perfectly level with Yichun's gaze. And the first layer of the divine light that ripples across its surface had now disappeared. The first prohibition, essence blood prohibition, had finally been unlocked. Yichun's hand movements changed as he immediately began the procedure to release the second layer of prohibition. From his sword palace acupoint at his brow, 3 streams of sword qi spirit liquid shot out and flew towards the crimson fire flying sword. This second layer of prohibition was, indeed, the sword qi prohibition. Just like when he removed the first layer, the essence blood prohibition. At the precise moment when a halo of light circling the flying sword reached a mysterious instant, the 3 streams of sword qi spirit liquid struck the prohibitive halo. Puff! 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 With this strike, the entire second layer of prohibition began to ripple crazily, and Yichun, manipulating the spell to remove the prohibition, had his hand seals moving in succession once again. A full tea time passed before the second layer, sword qi prohibition, was finally broken. Now, on the crimson fire flying sword, the prohibitive halo that remained had been reduced to its final layer. Facing this last layer of prohibition, Yichun's expression turned grave. According to the spell passed down by Qian Jizi, this final prohibition was the most difficult one. At the time of breaking this layer of prohibition, one must establish a wondrous connection with the flying sword. Only then could the sword begin to recognize its master. Yichun closed his eyes, following the spell, as his divine sense began to unfold slowly, inching towards the crimson fire flying sword. The third layer of prohibition was the divine sense prohibition. The three layers of prohibition, essence blood prohibition, sword chi prohibition, and divine sense prohibition, correspond to the three aspects of essence, chi, and spirit. This is to achieve fusion with the flying sword based on these three vital signs of life. Now, Yi Chun was left with just the last hurdle, the divine sense prohibition. Whether he could establish a mysterious rapport with the flying sword at this juncture rested on this single effort. Yi Chun dispelled all distracting thoughts, his mind focusing on nothing but the flying sword, the crimson fire flying sword. As Yi Chun's divine sense approached the crimson fire flying sword, the last layer of the prohibitive halo that remained on the sword suddenly expanded and contracted. And Yi Chun, following this rhythmic movement, began to enter a strange communication with the crimson fire flying sword. After an incense stick's worth of time, Yi Chun's eyes snapped open as the flying sword burst into light, and the last layer of prohibition, the divine sense prohibition, vanished amidst the radiance. The crimson fire flying sword, with its three layers of prohibitive halos lifted, now revealed countless mysterious patterns on its small, sword-shaped seed even more clearly. These were the natural divine patterns of heaven and earth, the divine patterns of the flying sword. With his eyes open, Yi Chun's gaze revealed a trace of joy as he felt the flying sword. He did not need to see it to sense the pulsating of the flying sword and its strange patterns. The sword recognition was happening now. In the sword palace acupoint at Yi Chun's brow, countless streams of sword chi spirit liquid surged violently. At the same time, the crimson fire flying sword, located within the halo of light, shot out with a swoosh and flew to the forefront of Yi Chun's brow. Capture! Yi Chun uttered the word softly, and at that instant, countless streams of sword chi spirit liquid flew out from the sword palace acupoint, enveloping the crimson fire flying sword. In this moment, the crimson fire flying sword did not flee. On the contrary, it flew directly towards the sword chi spirit liquid that Yi Chun had generated. This was unmistakably the sign of successful recognition. At this final moment, Yi Chun's expression was neither joyous nor sorrowful. All his focus immersed in the secret method of controlling the crimson fire flying sword and drawing it into the sword palace acupoint. After the sword chi spirit liquid had fully enveloped the flying sword, following the movement of his hand seals, there came a light buzzing sound as the crimson fire flying sword and the spirit liquid completely merged, shooting back towards the sword palace acupoint at his brow. Thud! As the crimson fire flying sword entered the sword palace acupoint at Yi Chun's brow, he sensed the life of the entire sword blossoming. He felt the crimson fire flying sword merging with his mind and spirit. The sword recognition was successful. By then, the crimson fire flying sword, floating in the vast lake of sword chi spirit liquid within the sword palace acupoint, was slowly being nourished by countless strands of sword chi spirit liquid. The tiny sword-shaped seed began its cultivation in the sword chi spirit liquid. When Yi Chun's mind stirred, and his gaze suddenly shot towards a point next to the mountain peak, a crimson sword-shaped seed flew out from his brow, turning into a speck of red light, shooting in that direction at breakneck speed. With another thought from Yi Chun, the speck of red light began to circle and dance around the mountaintop. Yi Chun slowly extended his palm. The red light shot back and fell into his hand, revealing the original form of the crimson fire flying sword. This was the very ability to control the flying sword with ease. Flying sword. This is my flying sword, the crimson fire flying sword. Yi Chun examined the flying sword in his palm as though he was looking at an intimate companion. From now on, the crimson fire flying sword would accompany him, joining him on his journey through the path of martial arts. After observing the crimson fire flying sword for a while, Yi Chun stirred his mind, and the flying sword returned to the sword palace acupoint at his brow, resuming its cultivation. Yi Chun stood up from his meditative stance, turning to look at Jiang Yao beside him. At this moment, Jiang Yao was also at the last moment of recognizing the ghostly water-flying sword. Chapter 50. The Three Great Forces of the Flying Sword. Just as Yi Chun stood up, the sword-shaped seed, a deep blue like water, floating before Zhang Yao's snow-white forehead, suddenly shot towards the center of her brow. A faint pattern of enchantments rippled on the spot between Zhang Yao's eyebrows, and the entire ghostly water-flying sword merged into Zhang Yao's sword palace acupoint. The ghostly water-flying sword, likewise, had successfully acknowledged its master. Zhang Yao slowly closed her beautiful eyes, quietly sensing the ghostly water-flying sword that had just accepted her as its master, and after a long time, she then opened her eyes. When she opened her eyes, a shallow smile appeared on her delicate little face, and her small dimples were irresistibly enticing. Yi Chen. Zhang Yao turned her head to look at Yi Chen and saw his smiling gaze directed at her. From Yi Chen's look, she knew that, just like her, he also had succeeded in having a flying sword acknowledge him as master. Congratulations to you both. At that moment, Qian Jizi's voice came over. His tone also contained a trace of joy. Yi Chen and Zhang Yao had obtained the flying sword heritage, and Qian Jizi was genuinely happy for them. Elder Qian Jizi. Both Yi Chen and Zhang Yao stood up and walked towards Qian Jizi, bowing deeply to him. The crimson fire and ghostly water flying swords were originally obtained by Qian Jizi and Lian Yu in the Sea God Palace. These swords were imbued with their hard work and, to a certain extent, Lian Yu's injury was even related to these swords. That Yi Chen and Zhang Yao had become the masters of this pair of flying swords, of course, they were extremely grateful to Qian Jizi and Lian Yu. Elder, who is the person you mentioned earlier who betrayed and fled? Now that Zhang Yao and I have successfully made the flying swords recognize us as masters, we will certainly fulfill that requirement. Yi Chen said to Qian Jizi. Previously, Qian Jizi had mentioned that the person who obtained the flying sword heritage must capture the one who severely injured Lian Yu and then fled, and bring them back to the Thousand Lotus Cave abode when they could. Yi Chen had already agreed to this. This promise had never been forgotten by Yi Chen, and now he brought it up again. Yes, please inform us about that person, Elder. Zhang Yao also looked towards Qian Jizi. Qian Jizi had not spoken before because Yi Chen and Zhang Yao had not yet made the flying swords accept them as masters. But now that the two were the masters of the twin crimson fire and ghostly water flying swords, he no longer hesitated. That person who fled is called Heavenly Saint Tuashan. With a gesture from Qian Jizi's hand, a figure appeared within the void. It was a somewhat hunched old man with white hair, full of wrinkles, leaning on a black cane. He appeared like a dying old man. But Yi Chen and Zhang Yao knew that someone who could be called a heavenly saint was far from dying, and probably with just the flick of a finger, could turn countless true Qi realm and spirit sea realm powerhouses into ash. Heavenly Saint Tuashan. The two of them memorized the visage and the name. Looking at the figure of Heavenly Saint Tuashan in the void, Qian Jizi's eyes revealed hatred. This Heavenly Saint Tuashan, also known as Elder Tuashan, lives on the chaotic sea's Manduo Mountain and is the lord of Manduo Mountain. He usually presents himself as extremely modest and benevolent. No one would have expected him to be so ruthless and vicious. Lian Yu and we misjudged him. If you encounter him one day, you must not be deceived by him. You must be careful of that black cane. He has never revealed that he was a sword cultivator. Even when we went to the Heavenly Saint Realm for the sword fighting conference, he only said he was accompanying Lian Yu and me to watch. No one would have guessed that his black cane was actually formed by an array of 86 spirit swords. The techniques he had hidden were on par with mine. Hearing Qian Jizi's words, Yi Chen's heart sank heavily. This Elder Tuashan truly had deep schemes to hide his capabilities so thoroughly, revealing them only at the last moment to betray and attack his peers. Yi Chen, Zhang Yao, as for this Elder Tuashan, you are not capable of dealing with him now. What I ask for is only a future. Qian Jizi then looked back at Yi Chen and Zhang Yao. The flying swords I gave you are to be a hidden trump card for you. We may not be as treacherous and betray others like Tuashan, but we must also have our own cards to play. Having a hidden trump card like this could save your lives at a critical moment. At all times, you must prepare more thoroughly. Only by surviving can you grow to a sufficiently high level. Qian Jizi's words made Yi Chen and Zhang Yao nod incessantly. They knew that these were the personal insights Chen Jizi had gained after many long years of cultivation. Lian Yu and I, we trusted those three people too much, which led us to fully unleash our abilities at the Heavenly Saint Realm Sword Fighting Tournament. If not for that, we wouldn't have ended up with the outcome we face today, he said with a sigh, looking at Yi Chun. Yi Chun, I see that all your techniques are those of a sword cultivator. In the future, you must cultivate other martial techniques as well. You may treat sword cultivator techniques as your main discipline, but you must not make it your only one, Chen Jizi instructed. Yes, thank you for your guidance, senior. Yi Chun nodded in agreement. He also had thoughts in his heart to cultivate several other martial techniques in order to diversify his own methods. Chen Jizi then turned to look at Zhang Yao. Zhang Yao, I'm not too worried about you. You're only 17 and already at the initial stage of the Spirit Sea realm. You have come far in the realm of true Qi, and it is evident that the sword cultivator techniques you use were learned halfway through your journey. Yes, senior, after attending the rotating Pill Realm Sword Fighting Tournament with my master, I began to cultivate a set of sword techniques, Zhang Yao replied, nodding her small head. Yi Chun had heard from Zhang Yao that her most formidable technique was actually a kind of bloodline secret skill, an extremely powerful true Qi secret skill and exclusive martial technique. It was only after she turned 14 that she began to train in swordsmanship. In just 3 years of training, she had already grasped the sword intent realm. Zhang Yao's talent in the sword path was equally formidable. Very well. I hope that one day you both can ascend to the Heavenly Saint Realm, or even one day surpass the Heavenly Saint Realm and step into the legendary Supreme Divine Realm. Perhaps by the time my true body returns from the Minor Spirit Realm, the both of you will have become incredibly powerful, Chen Jizi said to Yi Chun and Zhang Yao with a smile. The flying sword heritage of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode already has an inheritor. Before you leave, I will tell you a few more things about flying swords, which you must remember. A flying sword is a treasured companion of a sword cultivator, which needs continuous nurturing to become more and more powerful. The quality of a flying sword itself determines the final tier of the flying sword once it is fully cultivated. The pair of flying swords you've assimilated into the Sword Palace Acupoint are of Sacred Artifact grade. That is to say, once you've fully cultivated them, this pair of flying swords can become true sacred artifacts. A sacred artifact is sufficient for you to use all the way to the Heavenly Saint Realm, just like this Thousand Lotus Cave abode of mine, which is a spatial sacred artifact. To nurture a flying sword, you need Sword Qi Spirit Liquid. The Sword Qi Spirit Liquid you extracted from the Lotus Sword Pool comes from the Taiye Sword Sect, the great sword faction that Lian Yu and I once joined. It contains Taiye Sword Qi, a tremendously powerful form of innate Sword Qi. The Sword Qi Spirit Liquid should be enough for you to nurture the flying swords you've assimilated. Of course, if you can find other types of innate Sword Qi in the future, you can assimilate it into the Sword Palace Acupoint to continue nurturing your flying swords. Lastly, I will tell you about the 3 major combat capabilities of a flying sword. Upon saying this, Chen Jizi's expression turned serious. Yi Chun and Zhang Yao, who had been listening attentively, sensed the gravity in Chen Jizi's tone and grew even more focused, realizing that what was to follow was extremely important for them as the owners of flying swords. A so-called flying sword, hidden within the Sword Palace Acupoint, serves as a kind of secret technique, a powerful concealed method. Therefore, this secret should not be used frequently. Reserve it for critical moments. The 3 major combat capabilities of a flying sword are its normal state, life-bound flying sword breakage, and flying sword self-destruction. Under its normal state, the flying sword can aid you in regular combat. Life-bound flying sword breakage involves sacrificing the flying sword's own quality to boost combat power suddenly. For example, Yi Chun is now at the True Qi realm, but if he uses the Crimson Fire life-bound flying sword breakage, he can be a match for a Spirit Sea realm expert. However, life-bound flying sword breakage must not be used lightly because once employed, the flying sword will fall into a deep slumber until it repairs itself, after which it can be used again. If Yi Chun were to use Crimson Fire's breakage against a late-stage Spirit Sea realm individual, the flying sword would need at least 1,000 years to recover. Even if used against a mid-stage Spirit Sea Realm person, the sword would have to sleep for at least a century. Therefore, the combat power of life-bound flying sword breakage should not be deployed casually. When Chen Jizi talked about Yi Chen being able to match Spirit Sea Realm experts with life-bound flying sword breakage, a flicker of sharp light appeared in Yi Chen's eyes. But neither Chen Jizi nor Zhang Yao, deeply engrossed in their discussion, noticed his expression. Lastly, we come to flying sword self-destruction, he said, his voice growing heavy. Flying sword self-destruction is an utter unleashing of the flying sword's life-bound quality, releasing all its power at once. Under such circumstances, it can even exhibit the strongest state of a mature life-bound flying sword. But this should only be used in a life-and-death situation and not otherwise, because once a flying sword self-destructs, you, deeply connected with the sword in spirit, will also suffer a severe blow. At that point, not only will the flying sword be destroyed, but your sword palace acupoint will also be completely shattered. Back when Lian Yu and I encountered betrayal and an attempt on our lives by Tuashan and the others, Lian Yu's flying sword self-destructed in the end. Although it killed 2 of them and gravely wounded another, from that moment on, Lian Yu fell into a deep unconsciousness. You must remember that while life-bound flying sword breakage can be used once or twice, flying sword self-destruction must absolutely not be used unless it is a matter of life or death. Chen Jizi looked at Yichun and Zhang Yao earnestly as he spoke. Chapter 51 Farewell. The flying sword's normal state, its life essence damage, and its self-destruction. These 3 great powers of the flying sword become increasingly potent as one proceeds. However, correspondingly, the side effects of using them also grow greater. When a flying sword sustains life essence damage, it often requires the sword to slumber for hundreds to thousands of years. For a sword cultivator, this is tantamount to spending vast years or even possibly an entire lifetime without the ability to use the flying sword. Naturally, this cannot be used lightly. And as for the self-destruction of a flying sword, it is even more terrifying. Not only does it harm others, but it also harms oneself. Unless absolutely necessary, at a life or death moment, it must never be used lightly. The words of Chen Jizi gave Yichun and Zhang Yao a deeper understanding of the offensive power of flying swords. Yes, Senior. We now have an idea of how to use these 3 powers of the flying sword. Seeing Chen Jizi's solemn instructions, both Yichun and Zhang Yao nodded in agreement. Good. I have told you the important matters concerning flying swords. As for the rest, you will continue to understand them as you cultivate and use your flying swords. I have here 1,000 Lotus Sword scripture that records the insights Lian Yu and I had from cultivating from the true Qi realm to the heavenly saint realm, including our experience in nurturing and using flying swords. Take it and have a look. As Chen Jizi spoke, his finger pointed to the void, and 2 booklets appeared in the air. Then, the booklets flew towards Yichun and Zhang Yao. Upon receiving the booklets and looking at them, the words 1,000 Lotus Sword Scripture were written on the cover. 1,000 Lotus Sword Scripture. The insights from countless years of cultivating and using flying swords by Senior Chen Jizi and Senior Lian Yu. Chen Jizi gave it casually, but Yichun and Zhang Yao, upon obtaining the booklets, exchanged glances and revealed looks of joy in their eyes. Having just recognized the flying sword's crimson fire and ghostly water as their own, they had no clue on how to better nurture the flying swords. This 1,000 Lotus Sword scripture was just what they needed. Thank you, Senior. Holding the 1,000 Lotus Sword scripture, both of them bowed deeply in gratitude to Chen Jizi. Inside the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode, the 2 of them received so much. The regard and care Chen Jizi showed them warmed their hearts. Unfortunately, Senior Lian Yu was seriously injured, fell into a coma, and Senior Chen Jizi's true body also went to that minor spirit realm they had never heard of to seek healing treasures for Senior Lian Yu, leaving only his clone's shadow to guard the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode. They wished to help the 2 seniors, yet both were powerless to do so. Even the thought of confronting Heavenly Saint Tuashan, the one who had severely injured Lian Yu, was beyond their reach due to the vast difference in strength. How they wished to be powerful enough to lend a hand when those who were kind to them needed it. Amidst these inexplicable emotions, Yi Chen's desire to improve his strength grew even stronger. Being in the sixth layer of the true Qi realm was really far from enough. In this world, where there are meetings, there are farewells between people. As Yi Chen and Jiang Yao received the final inheritance of the flying sword and after numerous cautions from Chen Jizi, the affairs within the Thousand Lotus Cave abode were finally coming to an end. Yi Chen, Jiang Yao, you both have obtained Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water, and the trial of the Thousand Extremes Cave abode should also come to an end. In a moment, I will send you down 10,000 Swords Mountain, where Lian Yu's and my two spirit beasts will escort you out of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. I have left a secret technique towards the end of the Thousand Lotus Sword scripture for re-entering the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. If one day you manage to capture Tuashan, you can re-enter the Thousand Lotus Cave abode using this technique. Chen Jizi looked at the young man and woman before him with a hint of reluctance in his heart. But he had to send them away. Yi Chen and Jiang Yao were still young and needed to venture and cultivate in the outside world, while he had to guard the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, which also housed the comatose Lian Yu. He could not simply open the Thousand Lotus Cave abode and could not leave at will. To meet Yi Chen and Jiang Yao again, it would only be possible if his true body returned and he could freely move the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, meeting them in the process. Or it would be when Yi Chen and Jiang Yao fulfilled the only demand of the true body's inheritance by capturing Heavenly Saint Tuashan and re-entering the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. I hope that in the future, we will have another day to meet. Chen Jizi's clone sidelong and said to Yi Chen and Jiang Yao. Senior Chen Jizi. Yi Chen, looking at the clone's shadow, said, We will definitely have another day to meet. Jiang Yao, with her beautiful eyes filled with the sorrow of parting, said, We definitely will, Senior Chen Jizi. Yi Chen and I will certainly come back to the Thousand Extremes Cave abode. MHM. Chen Jizi smiled and nodded. All right, this matter is finished. You both should go down the mountain. As his rolling words came to an end, Yi Chen and Jiang Yao felt a light and airy current wrap around them, and in an instant they found themselves back at the foot of 10,000 Swords Mountain, the place where they had once started to climb it. As soon as they returned to the foot of 10,000 Swords Mountain, Yi Chen spotted the three-eyed giant ape and a giant feathered bird flying towards them. Yi Chen, Jiang Yao. The thunderous voice of the three-eyed giant ape boomed as it instantly arrived in front of the two. Congratulations to you both for having obtained the Flying Sword inheritance. That flying sword is a shocking treasure acquired by your two masters back in the day. With them, your path in the martial world will be far more certain, the three-eyed giant ape said cheerfully. When Yi Chen and Jiang Yao allowed the twin swords, Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water, to successfully recognize their masters, the two great spirit beasts below the mountain sensed a change in the aura of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. Clearly, the inheritance trial of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode had come to a complete end, and there would be no further tests in the future. The three-eyed giant ape even retracted all the spirit weapon fragments filled with sword intent that still lingered in the Heavenly Wind Kingdom. Yi Chen, Jiang Yao, congratulations. The voice of the colossal feathered sparrow also reached the ears of Yi Chen and Jiang Yao. Its voice, previously indifferent, had vanished entirely, replaced by a rare warmth. Yi Chen and Jiang Yao had received the inheritance of the flying swords, an inheritance left by the colossal feathered sparrow's master, Heavenly Saint Lian Yu. It naturally felt a sense of closeness to the new masters of the flying swords. Ape Senior, Feathered Sparrow Senior. Seeing the three-eyed giant ape and the colossal feathered sparrow, Yi Chen and Jiang Yao felt the same warmth. These two great spirit beasts had accompanied them through their adventures outside and inside the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. To say they hadn't formed a bond was simply impossible. In particular, upon seeing the colossal feathered sparrow and learning about its master Heavenly Saint Lian Yu's condition, Yi Chen and Jiang Yao felt an even greater sense of compassion. Their master had been severely injured and lain in a coma. It was unavoidable for the ape to blame Heavenly Saint Chen Ji. Its indifference and even alienation were only natural. Feathered Sparrow Senior, Heavenly Saint Lian, you will surely get better. Zhang Yao walked to the side of the colossal feathered sparrow, looking into its divine eyes, her delicate face incredibly serious as she spoke. You all know already. A trace of sadness flickered in the divine eyes of the colossal feathered sparrow, but seeing Zhang Yao's earnest expression, it very rarely smiled. She will get better. I also believe that my master will have the day of awakening again. Yichun, Zhang Yao, after we leave the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, who knows when we will meet again? After catching up with the two demons, the moment for Yichun and Zhang Yao to part with them had also come. Even the three-eyed giant ape, previously so excited, now had a much deeper voice. The colossal feathered sparrow stopped speaking altogether, falling silent. Without candidates to be tested, their days in the Thousand Lotus Cave abode would be even lonelier. Ape Senior, Feathered Sparrow Senior. I believe it won't be long before we meet again. By then, Heavenly Saint Qianji will have returned from the minor spirit realm, and Heavenly Saint Lian you will have awakened. At that time, your forays into the barbaric wilderness continent will be utterly thrilling. Yichun spoke of his hopes. Yes, the old feathered sparrow and I are Demon King-level existences, equivalent to the rotating pill realm experts among you humans. We have long lifespans. We can wait this out. Both masters will get better, and we will meet again. Yichun's words swept away the three-eyed giant ape's sorrow of parting, for it believed what Yichun said would truly come to pass. Yichun, Zhang Yao, looking at your sect garments, it seems you aren't from the same sect. After you go out, don't forget about each other. The twin swords, having recognized you both as masters at the same time, that's an enormous fate. At this moment, the colossal feathered sparrow suddenly spoke. Hearing the words of the colossal feathered sparrow, Yichun and Zhang Yao looked at each other. They had traveled and tackled obstacles together, and feelings had developed between them. Although they knew this time of separation was inevitable, neither had wanted to think about it. Now, the words of the colossal feathered sparrow made them realize it was time to part. Yichun, with her waterfall-like hair streaming down to her waist, a blush crept onto Zhang Yao's exquisite face as her clear eyes gazed at Yichun. You won't forget me, like the feathered sparrow senior said, will you? After saying this, the girl felt a hint of shyness warming her heart. Yichun grasped the girl's soft hand. The 36 sects are all in the eastern domain of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, not far from each other. You, a spirit sea realm expert with the great supernatural powers to fly and escape, how could you be challenged by such a distance? Won't you come looking for me? Zhang Yao's teeth gently bit her red lips, glancing at Yichun. Taishan sect is the foremost among the 36 sects in the eastern domain, and I've long wanted to see it. What's more, there's someone I want to meet there, someone named Zhang Yao. Yichun looked at Zhang Yao and said with a smile. Chapter 52, The Shocking News. Boom! After a brief spell of dizziness, Yichun's divine sense regained its clarity. Behind him, the 100-zhang tall shadow of the three-eyed giant ape slowly dissipated. In Yichun's fingers lingered the faint warmth of Zhang Yao's small hand. After a reluctant parting from the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, Zhang Yao returned to the Taishan sect, while Yichun was sent out of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode by the three-eyed giant ape, returning to the spot from where he was initially taken. Back again. After a month of braving the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, I've returned to this place. Yichun looked around. The cave where he practiced cultivation before entering the Thousand Lotus Cave abode was not far away, and every grass and tree around seemed unchanged from when he had left. However, the Sword Palace acupoint that had opened up between his brows, the immense sword chi spirit liquid within the acupoint, and the tiny sword-shaped seed, crimson fire flying sword, that was being nurtured inside the sword chi spirit liquid, all clearly indicated that everything had changed fundamentally. 1 month of trials in the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, and Yichun was completely different from before. Within his chi si, the original 5 true chi vortexes had evolved into 6. He had officially entered the 6th level of the true chi realm. Regarding martial skills, besides the cross rapid kill sword skills, the torrential rain sword skills, and the startling goose steps movement technique, he had acquired 2 more powerful martial skills, 2 high-grade Shin-level martial skills. Wind Thunder Sword skills and Wind Thunder movement. And what was even more precious was that, during the month spent in the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, in addition to the Storm Rain Sword intent he had originally comprehended, he had once again understood 2 more powerful sword intents, even more formidable than the Storm Rain Sword intent, the Purple Lightning Sword intent, and the Wind Sword intent. Understanding 3 types of sword intents in the true Qi realm was not only unprecedented in the 36 sects of the Eastern Domain, but also unheard of in the entire Heavenly Wind Kingdom. And the most treasured of all was the Crimson Fire Flying Sword, which was being quietly nurtured in the Sword Palace acupoint at the center of his brow. The ultimate reward of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode trials. The most precious reward. All the improvements mentioned earlier had once again elevated Yi Chen's combat power, from being able to crush practitioners at the 7th level of the true Qi realm, to contending with mighty warriors at the 9th level of the true Qi realm. Yet, the sacred artifact-level Crimson Fire Flying Sword bestowed upon him 3 major combat powers of a flying sword, possessing a real trump card. Even at the risk of life-bound damage to his flying sword, he could contend with late-stage warriors in the Spirit Sea realm. Although such a method should not be used lightly, it was, after all, Yi Chen's technique. Whether he used it or not, it existed. In times of absolute necessity, even at the risk of putting his flying sword to sleep for 100 or 1,000 years, Yi Chen dared to inflict heavy damage on Spirit Sea realm warriors. That Zhou Yuntian, the father of Zhou Hai, elder Zhou Yuntian of the Heavenly Net sect, was an intermediate stage warrior of the Spirit Sea realm. When Yi Chen killed Zhou Hai, he anticipated that Zhou Yuntian would seek trouble with him, but Zhou Hai had to be killed. Yi Chen would never spare someone who relentlessly pursued and sought revenge against him. If he didn't kill Zhou Hai would still want him dead. If he killed Zhou Hai's father, Zhou Yuntian, would still want him dead. It was because his strength wasn't sufficient that he was trapped in this predicament with Zhou Yuntian. Now, with the Crimson Fire Flying Sword, Yi Chen finally had the means to break this deadlock. Although he was reluctant to cause his newly acquired Crimson Fire Flying Sword to suffer life-bound damage and fall asleep, if Zhou Yuntian really pushed him to that extent, he would, risking the sleep of his life-bound flying sword, resolve the trouble of Zhou Yuntian once and for all. Besides the Crimson Fire Flying Sword, he had the Primordial Star Scripture, an even more powerful and mysterious technique, so he could afford it. Strength. It's the lack of strength that creates all sorts of predicaments. Only with great strength can one find opportunities and ways to break through. I'll put Zhou Yuntian's matter to rest for now. With a plan for the worst-case scenario, I need not worry about it anymore. Now, it's time to continue enhancing my strength. Yi Chen never believed that one could simply sit and yet gain an increase in strength. True powerhouses are all individuals of great resolve, perseverance, and sacrifice. If I reckon the time, there's just over a month left until the Qingyun sect's official disciple entrance examination. Whether it's to enter the Qingyun sect's outer sect, or to meet Jiang Yao at the Taishin sect in the future, only with great strength will I be respected by others. This month or so, just continue to stay in the mountains and cultivate. Having made up his mind, Yi Chen returned to the cave where he had previously undergone bitter cultivation and resumed his training. Each day, he would start by cultivating his qi early in the morning, using the Gang Yuan mantra from the Primordial Star Scripture to cultivate Gang Yuan True Qi. Afterward, he began to cultivate the 2 sub-techniques of the newly acquired high-grade Shin-level cultivation techniques, the Wind Sword Skills martial skill and the Wind Movement Skills movement technique. Having understood the Wind Sword intent, Yi Chen found both the Wind Sword skills and Wind Movement skills very smooth to cultivate. If he could continue to cultivate in 10,000 Beasts Mountain like this, by the time the entrance examination day of Qingyun sect arrived more than a month later, Yi Chen was absolutely confident that he could raise his strength by another level. However, an unexpected event suddenly disrupted his plans. This was the 17th day since Yi Chen had left the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. On this day, he had just managed to reach minor accomplishment in the Wind Movement Skills movement technique and was constantly darting through the mountains, experiencing the power of this newly minted lower-grade Shen-level movement technique. As he darted into a valley, voices from ahead suddenly made him stop. Since he began cultivating the Gang Yuan mantra, Yi Chen's sensitivity to his surroundings had greatly increased, and he could hear the voices up ahead loud and clear. In a valley a few hundred meters from Yi Chen, 8 young men were seated in meditation. These 8 youths were dressed in the attire of disciples from the Heavenly Net sect. Among them, 6 had attained the 7th level of the True Qi realm, while 2 were at the 8th level. 6 at the 7th level of True Qi, 2 at the 8th level. Such a squad was powerful enough to sweep through the peripheral areas of 10,000 Beasts Mountain. Yet, these people were sitting in the valley, showing no intention of hunting demon beasts. The 8 of them were sitting together, casually chatting and drinking wine. Brother Shuelei, we have been patrolling this blue valley for over a month now and haven't seen even a shadow of that Yi Chen. Where could he possibly be hiding? One of the 7th level True Qi disciples asked. The brother Shuelei he mentioned was one of the 2 8th level True Qi disciples. He glanced at the speaking disciple. Xiao Ming, don't be complacent. The elder tasked us with guarding this place, so that once we find even a trace of Yi Chen, we must capture him. If you mess up the elder's plans, you won't have enough heads to lose. Besides, it's not just us patrolling. The elder has set up over 100 disciples throughout 10,000 Beasts Mountain. Even disciples at the 10th level of True Qi are seriously patrolling. Compared to those brothers, we're nothing special. From these Heavenly Net sect disciples' conversation, it was clear that they were one of the many teams that Zhou Yuntian had dispatched to 10,000 Beasts Mountain to capture Yi Chen. Zhou Yuntian really had no intention of letting Yi Chen go, and he had assembled such a large force. The disciple who spoke before, Xiao Ming, murmured, Brother Shuelei, I would never be careless. But, catching Yi Chen, who is rumored to be at the 5th level of True Qi, does it justify mobilizing so many of us? Even disciples at the 10th level of True Qi have been disturbed. As he was speaking, Shuelei suddenly interrupted him. What nonsense are you talking? Even though Yi Chen is at the 5th level of True Qi, he killed Elder Zhou's son, Zhou Hai, who was at the 7th level of True Qi. A 5th level expert taking down someone at the 7th level, what does that tell you? It means Yi Chen likely has hidden tricks up his sleeve. The elder sent so many of us to capture him as a precaution. Although it's easy for so many of us to catch him, we cannot afford to be careless. Shuelei's words made the murmuring Xiao Ming dare not utter another word. Then, another 8th level True Qi young man beside Shuelei spoke up. Speaking of which, Elder Zhou's son, Zhou Hai, has been using his father's name to kill and loot in 10,000 Beasts Mountain, creating many enemies. Unexpectedly, he fell at the hands of a measly 8th-ranked sect disciple. It must be that Zhou Hai was trying to snatch that person's treasure, but was killed instead. Alas, it's a pity he was Elder Zhou's most beloved son. Now, even if that kid were more talented, he's dead without a place to be buried. At this point, Shuelei also sneered, not just without a place to be buried, but he has also implicated his mortal parents. I heard that the elder went to Yi Chen's family clan in Qingyang town himself, captured Yi Chen's parents, and brought them back to Qingyun's sect. Moreover, he spread the news that if Yi Chen doesn't show himself within 3 months, he will personally execute Yi Chen's parents right at Qingyun's sect. Shuelei's words shocked the others. Yi Chen's parents are mortals, not cultivators? Within our heavenly wind kingdom, martial practitioners have a rule not to lay hands on mortals. The elder, they all stopped talking at that point, not daring to fault their elder. Zhou Hai was the elder's most beloved son, and now that Zhou Hai has died, the elder has gone mad, not caring about such rules anymore. It's unlucky for Yi Chen to have provoked the elder. As Shuelei was lamenting, a towering killing intent suddenly surged towards him. Before he could react, a figure appeared before him. Yi Chen. Upon seeing this person's face, Shuelei exclaimed in disbelief. If it wasn't Yi Chen, whom the entire Heavenly Net sect's hundreds of disciples were searching for in 10,000 Beasts Mountain, then who else could it be? Chapter 53, Raging Fury. The one who appeared in front of Shui Lei was none other than Yi Chun. Earlier, when Yi Chun comprehended the wind movement skills, he flew to this valley. Hearing someone mention his name, he stopped to listen closely to their conversation. After listening for a short while, Yi Chun learned the identities of the group speaking. It turned out these people were from the Heavenly Net sect, sent by Zhou Hai's father, Zhou Yuntian, to 10,000 Beasts Mountain to capture him as part of the many dispatched for this task. Yi Chun wasn't surprised in the slightest that Zhou Yuntian would send people to 10,000 Beasts Mountain to hunt him down. Even if a large group of disciples, among them masters with level 10 true Qi, had been sent, Yi Chun wouldn't find it odd. Between him and Zhou Yuntian, one bore the grudge of being hunted, the other the hatred for killing his son. It was understandable for Zhou Yuntian to want to deal with him. However, when he heard from Shui Lei that his parents had been captured by Zhou Yuntian and taken to the Qingyun sect, and that if he didn't show up within 3 months, they would execute his parents, how could Yi Chun restrain himself? His soul had merged with that of his previous life, and their emotions coexisted. His previous life's parents were his parents, and naturally, his affection for them was entrenched in his heart, and it was deep. In Yi Chen's memory, his parents were very kind to him. During the more than 2 years he had been in the Qingyun sect, he felt too ashamed to return to the Yi family at the end of the year due to no breakthroughs in his cultivation. But his parents, every year, would send him a generous amount of silver for his cultivation needs and letters full of concern, taking great care of him. His parents, who came from the Yi family, a prominent family in Qinyang City, had never opened their Qi acupoint, never stepped into the world of martial arts cultivation, and were merely ordinary mortals. They managed the family's business affairs on a day-to-day basis without ever getting involved in the vengeful world of warriors. And now, because of him, they had been captured by Zhou Yuntian and taken to the Qingyun sect, their lives hanging by a thread because of him. Yi Chun felt self-blame. He was upset that his parents were implicated because of him. But even more so, he was furious that Zhou Yuntian had completely disregarded the rules of the martial arts world and targeted his parents. In the world of martial artists, no matter how great the enmity, it was acceptable to settle disputes with life and death, but one must never involve others, especially not non-cultivating ordinary mortals. This was an unspoken rule agreed upon by nearly all martial artists. That's why even after Yi Chun killed Zhou Hai, while he had to be wary of Zhou Yuntian, he had never imagined that Zhou Yuntian would target his parents. Now, Zhou Yuntian had broken this rule. Not only had he captured his parents, but he also threatened to execute them publicly. How could Yi Chun not be enraged? How could he not be fuming with anger? Thus, after listening to the conversation of those Heavenly Net sect disciples for a while, Yi Chun could no longer hold back. He immediately charged out. Yi Chun, is that really the Yi Chun that Elder Zhou wanted us to capture? When Yi Chun suddenly appeared, all 8 Heavenly Net sect disciples were shocked. Then, when they clearly saw Yi Chen's face, they burst into euphoria. They never thought that after searching for more than a month without finding Yi Chun, he would now appear right before them. Despite being shocked by Yi Chen's ghostly movements, none of the 8 disciples were worried, with 6 of them at the 7th level of true Qi and 2 even higher at the 8th level. Facing Yi Chun, rumored to be only at the 5th level of true Qi, they didn't have the slightest concern. At this moment, in their eyes, Yi Chun had turned into a mountain of pure silver. Catch him, and the elder said that whichever team captures Yi Chun, each member will be rewarded with 100,000 taels of silver and a set of superior yellow-tier martial skills. Whoosh! 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 All 8 Heavenly Net sect disciples drew their weapons, and instantly, true Qi burst forth as they launched their martial skills in a coordinated assault towards Yi Chun. Zhou Yuntian had sent these people into 10,000 Beasts Mountain with both stick and carrot, on one hand, ordering strict surveillance of the mountain areas, and on the other promising substantial rewards. 100,000 taels of silver, plus a set of superior yellow-tier martial skills, was a reward so generous it was enough for these disciples to use for 5 or 6 years of cultivation. All these individuals in the Heavenly Net sect were ruthless, and it didn't matter if Yi Chun was unrelated to them. With such a promise of silver, They might betray even those they were familiar with on the spot. Now, facing Yi Chun, they wouldn't show the slightest mercy. With a glance exchanged between them, they instantly agreed to collectively assault Yi Chun, aiming to shatter his qi, cripple him completely, and deliver him to their elder Zhou Yuntian to claim their hefty rewards. Each of you is rewarded with 100,000 taels of silver, plus a set of superior yellow-tier martial skills? Zhou Yuntian sure is generous. To deal with me, Yi Chun, he's really gone to great lengths. Facing the 8 disciples of the Heavenly Net sect converging on him, Yi Chun laughed in furious disbelief. He didn't use the wind movement skills to dodge their encirclement, but instead mobilized his sword intents in an instant. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In an instant, the terrifying sword intents swept across 100 feet, and countless falling leaves rose up, shooting through the air and heading straight for the 8 Heavenly Net sect disciples. Thud, 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 thud. Radiant light danced upon the falling leaves. 7 of the 8 disciples attacking Yi Chun were instantly decapitated by the leaves, their heads flying off, their eyes wide with disbelief and horror. Then, boom, 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 boom. The headless bodies, along with their severed heads, fell to the ground, raising clouds of dust as they hit the dirt. The 7 who sought to kill Yi Chun were instead instantly slain by his hand and lay dead on the spot. The only person left in the arena was Xue Lei, the one with the 8th level of true qi. His arm, which he had used to wield his sword in an attempt to kill Yi Chun, was severed by the flying leaves during the clash, and flew off, spurting a fountain of blood. But Xue Lei acted as though he hadn't even realized his arm had been cut off. He was completely petrified with fear. How could he have possibly imagined that their formidable small team, composed of 8 Heavenly Net sect disciples, 6 at the 7th level and 2 at the 8th level of true qi, would be annihilated by Yi Chun in an instant with 7 of them killed? It was completely beyond his comprehension. In that move, even the other disciple at the 8th level of true qi, who was as strong as he was, had no time to react and was beheaded just like the others. Xue Lei knew that if Yi Chun had wanted to kill him, he would already be just another corpse like the rest. Could Yi Chun really be this terrifying? This was akin to the technique of a true qi 10th level expert. No, even those 10th level experts, despite their immensely powerful true qi, had few martial skills as frightening as this. Those odd falling leaves were like deadly sword lights. They could not defend against them at all, even less so than against a 10th level true qi expert. Of course, they couldn't defend against it. Yi Chen's previous move contained the terrifying wind sword intent. Against the most perilous barrier in the central region of 10,000 Swords Mountain, surrounded by hundreds of treasured swords, and even 3 sword intent treasured swords comparable to a 9th level true qi expert, he could suppress them all. How could this 8-member team, with their highest member only at the 8th level of true qi, stand a chance? Even if there were 10 times as many members in such a squad, they would still be annihilated by Yi Chun with a single move. This was the power of sword intent, the power of decimating groups. Unless there was a 10th level true qi expert among them who could withstand Yi Chun with the gap in their true qi realms, the others were simply no match for Yi Chun. Looking at the severed heads and bodies around him, and watching Yi Chun approach step by step, Xue Lei collapsed to the ground. Looking at Yi Chun, fear was evident in his eyes, and his entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. Yi Chen's resolute slaughter was like a death god, thoroughly crushing him. Don't kill me. Yi Chun, please don't kill me. It's Elder Zhou. Elder Zhou is the one who wants to deal with you. It's not that we particularly wanted to kill you. Xue Lei cried and wailed. Yi Chun walked up to Xue Lei, his face expressionless as he looked at him. You just said that Zhou Yuntian has captured my parents and brought them to Qingyun's sect. Is that true, or is it a lie you made up? It's true. Absolutely true. Upon Yi Chen's questioning, Xue Lei dared not fail to answer, swearing to the heavens. This news has already spread everywhere. Just ask around, and you'll know. Right now, Elder Zhou is visiting the Qingyun sect, waiting for you to walk into the trap. Elder Zhou is notoriously ruthless. If you don't return to Qingyun's sect, He really will execute your parents himself. He is spreading this news to make sure you can't hide. If you don't go to your death, he will have your parents killed. Boom! Boom! Shui Lei's words obliterated the last bit of hope Yichun held on to. His parents were indeed implicated in this affair. Zhou Yuntian truly wanted to engage in a fight to the death with him. Since that's the case, it's time to put an end to this matter once and for all. Yichen's eyes blazed with anger and his will to fight ignited as he looked in the direction of Qingyun's sect. Crimson Fire, if your essence is damaged, don't blame me. If you get injured this time, even if it takes hundreds or thousands of years to recuperate, I'll search for heavenly treasures to bring you back. Yichen's mind delved into the Sword Palace acupoint, where the small red flying sword, under his mental agitation, trembled wildly in the sword chi spirit liquid, as if the flying sword Crimson Fire was also preparing for its imminent first battle. What Yichun didn't know, as his anger surged and his mind agitated the flying sword Crimson Fire into a frenzy, thousands of miles away within the most secluded peak cave of Taishan sect, the foremost of the 36 sects in the eastern region of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom. A sitting girl's glabella was marked by a dark blue flying sword that also began to pulsate. Just half a step behind the girl, 7 or 8, 12 or 13-year-olds girls with swords on their backs were sitting, and right in front of the girl, seated in the most honorable position, was a woman in her mid-20s wearing a snow-white palace dress, who looked like a nine heavens fairy. If the leaders of the 36 sects of the eastern region of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom were to see this woman in the snow-white palace dress, they would recognize her as the strongest person in the eastern region, an intermediate stage master of the rotating pill realm, Fairy Jia Luo. Ghostly water, what's happening with it? At this moment, the sitting girl noticed the pulse of the flying sword on her glabella and her fine brows furrowed. Suddenly, as if she had thought of something, she stood up abruptly. Twin swords, ghostly water, and crimson fire. If there's a disturbance with ghostly water, could it be that some major event is befalling Crimson Fire? Crimson Fire's master is Yi Chun. Could it be that something has happened to Yi Chun? The name etched deeply in her heart came to mind, and the thought that he might be in danger. The girl's heart tightened suddenly. In this cave, the girl who sat at Fairy Jia Luo's feet was none other than Zhang Yao, who had separated from Yi Chun 17 days ago and returned to Taishan sect. Chapter 54. Turbulence. The thought that Yi Chun might be in trouble rendered Zhang Yao unable to remain calm, and she immediately dashed out of the cave abode. Her delicate face was filled with panic, and her heart was in turmoil. She wished she could fly to Yi Chen's side at once. Sister Zhang Yao. Zhang Yao's actions startled the 7 or 8, 12, or 13-year-old sword-bearing girls sitting behind her, all of whom widened their eyes at Zhang Yao. They had never seen their graceful, beautiful, and genius sister, Zhang Yao, in such a flustered state. One of those sword-bearing girls ran straight up to Zhang Yao, looking at her worriedly. Sister Zhang Yao, what's wrong? This sword-bearing girl was none other than Chon'er, the girl whom Zhang Yao had asked to oversee the training of the Taishan sect's outer disciples on the Mountain Gate Plaza, when she left for 10,000 Beasts Mountain's Thousand Lotus Cave abode. She also had the closest relationship with Zhang Yao among all the girls. Chon'er and the other girls' voices snapped Zhang Yao out of her panic, and she then remembered she was in the middle of cultivating Snow-Filled Universe, a minor mystical power, under the tutelage of her master, Fairy Jia Luo, in the cave abode. Master instructed me to stay in the cave abode during this time to cultivate the Snow-Filled Universe, and not to leave until I've achieved significant mastery. Zhang Yao turned her head to look at Fairy Jia Luo, who was seated at the most prominent position in the cave. At the moment, this powerful figure, clad in a snow-white gown and at the intermediate stage of the rotating pill realm, who was also Zhang Yao's master, Fairy Jia Luo, was still cultivating with her eyes closed, as if she hadn't noticed the unusual situation in the cave, oblivious to Zhang Yao's distress. Master doesn't allow me to leave the cave during this time. Zhang Yao's master, Fairy Jia Luo, usually treated her with immense affection, but she was extremely strict when it came to cultivation. Without her master's permission, Jiang Yao didn't dare to step out of the cave. She had no choice but to stop her rush towards the cave's entrance. But Yi Chun, torn between disobeying her master's orders and her concern for Yi Chun, Jiang Yao's eyebrows furrowed deeply, her delicate face filled with struggle. Sister Jiang Yao. At that moment, Chon'er called out Jiang Yao's name with concern again. Hearing Chon'er's voice, an idea suddenly flashed through Jiang Yao's mind. Chon'er, come here. She hurriedly called the sword-bearing girl Chon'er over and took out an ancient-looking token. Chon'er, you must hurry to Qingyun sect and see if anything has happened to Yi Chun. If Yi Chun is in any trouble, you must help him. And if you can't solve the issue, take out the Taishin command. Having been separated from Yi Chun for over 10 days, Jiang Yao suddenly sensed that something had happened to him. She thought Yi Chun must have returned to his sect, the Qingyun sect, and encountered some difficult issue that caused the Crimson Fire Flying Sword to create such disturbance. If the Crimson Fire Flying Sword was causing such a commotion, it likely meant that Yi Chun was about to use it. Knowing Yi Chen's capabilities made Jiang Yao even more worried. She remembered that the heavenly Saint Qianji's avatar had said that the flying sword should not be used lightly, as doing so could mean that a significant event had occurred.
Yi Chen.
Which Yi Chen? Sister Jiang Yao. You even took out the Taishin command? The sword-bearing girl Chon'er, seeing Jiang Yao's actions, was greatly surprised. Although she had never met Yi Chun, the way Jiang Yao spoke of him clearly indicated he had a significant relationship with her. Otherwise, her always composed sister Jiang Yao wouldn't be so worried, so flustered, and even take out the Taishin command. The Taishin command could only be held by Spirit Sea Realm experts of the Taishin sect. Possessing it was akin to having a Spirit Sea Realm expert from the Taishin sect present in person. As the strongest and top-ranked sect among the 36 in the eastern region of Heavenly Wind Kingdom, the Taishin sect's Spirit Sea Realm experts also possessed great renown across all the sects in the eastern region. With the Taishin command issued, many troubles could be resolved without difficulty. Jiang Yao took out the Taishin command to have Chon'er go help Yi Chun. Chon'er immediately understood that, no matter what had happened to Yi Chun, her sister Jiang Yao was determined to help him. Yi Chen. Chon'er grew increasingly curious about the person she had never met but who Jiang Yao cared about so dearly. Yes, you haven't met Yi Chun. Jiang Yao, worried and confused, realized upon hearing Chon'er's words that she had never seen Yi Chun before. Chon'er, I'll inscribe Yi Chen's situation on a jade slip. You'll know all about him on your way to Qingyun sect. Hurry! Jiang Yao took out a snow-white jade slip, pressed it against her forehead for a moment, and then handed it to Chon'er. This was a jade slip capable of storing information with spiritual awareness, commonly used by Spirit Sea Realm experts. Chon'er took the jade slip and, with Jiang Yao's urging, didn't hesitate further. She nodded at Jiang Yao and said, Sister Jiang Yao, don't worry. That Yi Chen, he will definitely be fine. After speaking, the sword-bearing girl turned and left the cave. Soon thereafter, a majestic white eagle landed before her, and the girl mounted the eagle and flew off towards Qingyun's sect. Watching Chon'er fly into the distance, Jiang Yao returned to the cave abode and took her seat once more. However, her heart still couldn't be stilled. Right, I was only thinking of Yi Chen going back to Qingyun's sect. What if Yi Chun encountered trouble on 10,000 Beasts Mountain? There are fierce beasts in 10,000 Beasts Mountain that he cannot handle. Considering the various troubles Yi Chun might face, the more Jiang Yao thought about it, the more her heart became chaotic. No matter what, I mustn't let Yi Chun meet with disaster. In the end, she could no longer hold back, and could not heed her master's order not to leave the cave abode. She bit her red lips tightly and stood up directly. Jiang Yao's pair of clear, beautiful eyes glanced at Fairy Jialuo, who was meditating with her eyes closed, and then, stamping her foot, she transformed into a stream of light and flew toward the outside of the cave abode. She only left a few sword-carrying maidens behind with shocked expressions, whispering among themselves. Continue cultivating in peace and don't worry about that girl Yaoer. A clear voice interjected, instantly ceasing the maidens' whispers. The maidens looked up at the head of the cave abode, only to see their master, Fairy Jia Luo, clad in a snowy white, dignified and majestic palace dress, had awakened from her meditation without their noticing and opened her eyes. "Master!" The maidens were startled and hurriedly paid their respects to Fairy Jia Luo. However, Fairy Jia Luo's eyes were looking past the maidens, toward the entrance of the cave abode. "Since that girl Yaoer returned from 10,000 Beasts Mountain, she has been distracted. I arranged for her to cultivate the snow-filled universe minor divine technique in the cave abode to help her calm her mind. Now she has directly ignored my command. It was not enough that she arranged for Chon'er to go out. She has gone out herself. Although she had not opened her eyes earlier, she had been fully aware of everything happening in the cave abode. Yi Chen. It seems I must also go and see what kind of person this Yi Chen is, to have such a hold on my disciple," she said. Fairy Jia Luo shook her head with a helpless smile. Then, without any visible action, she simply disappeared from her meditation spot in the cave abode. Within the main hall, Qingyun Hall of Qingyun Sect's inner peak. At this moment, all the great elders of Qingyun Sect were seated on both sides of the hall, and their sect master, Luo Kuan, was talking to a gaunt old man in a crimson robe. This old man in crimson was none other than Zhou Hai's father, Zhou Yuntian, an elder of Heavenly Net Sect, a deluxe sect, and a powerful figure in the middle stage of the Spirit Sea Realm. Just as Shuelei had said, he was visiting Qingyun Sect and was treated as an honored guest. Qingyun Sect, being an 8th grade sect, didn't have even 1/10 the might of the 7th grade Heavenly Net Sect and, therefore, had to treat Elder Zhou Yuntian with the utmost respect. It must be known that the hierarchical division of sects meant that an 8th grade sect was represented by its strongest being in the Spirit Sea Realm. At the same time, a 7th grade sect implied that its most powerful members had already broken through to the rotating pill realm. Only a sect with an early-stage rotating pill realm powerhouse could qualify as a 7th grade sect. The rotating pill realm was a more powerful realm beyond the Spirit Sea Realm, and an early-stage rotating pill realm expert could annihilate countless Spirit Sea Realm powerhouses. Thus, the 7th grade Heavenly Net Sect looked down upon the 8th grade Qingyun Sect. Even an elder from the Heavenly Net Sect could sit on an equal footing with the master of Qingyun Sect. And the only 6th grade sect among the top 36 sects in the eastern domain of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, the Taishan Sect, was even stronger than the Heavenly Net Sect, with 3 mid-stage rotating pill realm experts sitting at its helm. If an elder from Taishan Sect were to visit Qingyun Sect, then Sect Master Luo Kuan wouldn't dare speak of sitting as an equal. Instead, he would have to greet the elder respectfully from a lower seat. This was the difference in strength between the sects. "Elder Zhou, have you received any news about that nominal disciple of our sect, Yi Chen, whom you want to capture?" Luo Kuan asked with a smile. Upon hearing the name, Yi Chen, Zhou Yuntian's expression darkened. "Humph, that Yi Chen can't escape the palm of my hand. I refuse to believe that he can keep hiding forever. I've already spread the news that I'm going to execute his parents, and I've had my disciples widely disseminate it throughout 10,000 Beasts Mountain. I cannot believe that he won't show himself after hearing this, that he will still hide." Thinking of using this strategy to force Yi Chen to show himself, Zhou Yuntian gnashed his teeth in hatred. Humph! Even if he neglects his parents' lives and continues to hide, the secret treasure that another elder of my sect is refining is almost complete. With that secret treasure to search through 10,000 Beasts Mountain, even if he's hiding in an underground cavern, I will capture him. By the end, Zhou Yuntian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The master and the elders of Qingyun Sect blanched a bit upon hearing Zhou Yuntian's words about executing Yi Chen's parents to force him to appear, and they offered several awkward laughs. To capture Yi Chen's parents, who were untrained in martial arts, and force Yi Chen to appear was a breach of the unwritten rules of the martial world, and to have such an act occur within their sect, the elders and master of Qingyun Sect felt quite embarrassed. However, in the face of Zhou Yuntian's actions, they dared not voice any complaints. With the backing of a rotating pill realm sect master from Heavenly Net Sect, they could only cooperate with Zhou Yuntian's plan. In fact, many elders, along with the master of Qingyun Sect, had even come to resent Yi Chen for causing them trouble. They could only hope that Yi Chun was captured soon by Zhou Yuntian to put an end to this affair. Yet one or two elders could only sigh in resignation, knowing that their sect's nominal disciple, Yi Chun, was likely to die at Zhou Yuntian's hands for nothing. While Jiang Yao had sent the sword-carrying maiden Chaner to rush to Qingyun's sect and had flown out of Taishan sect herself heading toward 10,000 Beasts Mountain in search of Yi Chun, and while the most powerful figure among the 36 sects of Heavenly Wind Kingdom, Fairy Jialuo, had mysteriously left due to Jiang Yao's actions, and while Zhou Yuntian was a guest in the main hall of Qingyun's sect, waiting for news of Yi Chun, vowing not to rest until Yi Chun was dead, Yi Chun had finally returned to Qingyun's sect from 10,000 Beasts Mountain. The winds were changing. A great battle was imminent. Chapter 55 Tower. Qingyun's sect. I have returned. Yi Chun looked up at the Qingyun sect's entrance plaza not far ahead, his eyes filled with complex and indescribable emotions. More than 3 months ago, he left Qingyun sect to go to 10,000 Beasts Mountain in order to accumulate real battle experience and enhance his strength. In these 3 months, he had successfully broken through from the 4th level of True Qi to the 6th level, and his strength had increased by several tens of times or more. Now, with his many hidden techniques, he could even kill a 9th level True Qi expert without breaking a sweat. He had very well achieved his goal of entering 10,000 Beasts Mountain. But upon returning to the sect, Yi Chun felt not a whit of joy, but rather a surge of anger in his heart, because his parents were being detained within Qingyun's sect. It was all because of Zhou Yuntian, who had subjected his parents to such humiliation. It was because of Zhou Yuntian that his parents' peaceful life had been shattered. Zhou Yuntian, if it weren't for your son pressing me relentlessly, refusing to stop until he killed me, I wouldn't have killed him. He forced my hand first. Now you've even dragged my parents into this. Do you really think I'll just let you bully me? Do you truly believe that, with your Spirit Sea Realm mid-stage cultivation, you can kill me? Well, let's try then. Whirring. Inside Yi Chen's body, 6 True Qi whirlpools surged wildly, with robust True Qi enveloping him. At the same time, the flying sword Crimson Fire, in the Sword Palace acupoint between his eyebrows also started to move ferociously, swimming in the Sword Qi spirit liquid. After fully opening his Qi Meridian, 8 extraordinary meridians and 33 heaven cycles, his Gang Yuan True Qi also flowed slowly, and Yi Chun became acutely aware of every change within 100 yards around him. He had made all the preparations necessary to fully settle the matter with Zhou Yuntian concerning the ocean affair. Swoosh! Yi Chen's figure moved, and the wind movement technique turned him into a gust of wind as he shot towards the entrance plaza of Qingyun's sect. There are so many heavenly net sect disciples within Qingyun's sect. As soon as he approached the outer peak's entrance plaza, Yi Chun, with his senses extending in all directions, immediately noticed the change from the usual scene at the plaza. Normally, the plaza was filled with Qingyun sect's nominal disciples practicing their cultivation, and if there were others, at most they would be Qingyun sect's outer disciples coming in and out of the mountains passing through the plaza. It was rare for disciples from other sects to appear in the plaza. However, the plaza was now clearly filled with many disciples wearing heavenly net sect's uniforms, walking around inspecting various areas, as if searching for something. The Qingyun sect disciples would hurriedly avoid these heavenly net sect disciples and dare not provoke them. Yet, there were still many who were caught by patrolling heavenly net sect disciples and interrogated, causing quite a few Qingyun sect disciples to turn red with anger, yet not daring to speak out. That Zhou Yuntian is so arrogant, to actually send disciples to search inside Qingyun sect. This is like stepping on Qingyun sect's face with feet. From the expressions of those heavenly net sect disciples, Yi Chun knew they were probably looking for him. What he hadn't anticipated was that the Qingyun sect's sect master and elders would tacitly allow this to happen. At this moment, Yi Chun felt utterly disappointed with Qingyun sect. As a nominal disciple of Qingyun sect, they should have stepped forward to protect him. Now it seemed that Qingyun sect had no intention of protecting him at all. Even more so, the fact that his parents had been captured by Zhou Yuntian and brought to Qingyun sect was likely with the sect's acquiescence. Even if he had caused trouble, the The sect may not dare to interfere, but at the very least, they shouldn't allow the parents of their own disciple to be captured by others and brought to Qingyun's sect. Even if Zhou Yuntian had forcibly taken his parents away, capturing them to Heavenly Net sect, Yichun wouldn't have blamed Qingyun's sect. Now, however, it was evident that Qingyun's sect didn't regard him as one of their own disciples to protect at all. Is it because of the difference in strength? Zhou Yuntian is indeed a mid-stage Spirit Sea realm expert, and I am but a nominal disciple in the sect. But to simply give up on one's own sect disciples, that truly is disappointing. Yichun chuckled coldly. Capturing a few Heavenly Net sect disciples should lure out that Zhou Yuntian, right? He's been hoping for me to fall into his trap, hasn't he? Then, let's fulfill his wish. As Yi Chen's figure moved, he darted towards the sect entrance plaza. Just as he was about to capture a few Heavenly Net sect disciples to draw out Zhou Yuntian, his divine consciousness detected at the corner of the sect entrance plaza a group of Heavenly Net sect disciples surrounding a little girl. Yi Chen's eyes suddenly flashed with sharpness. Is that Tower? What is she doing here? Narrowing his eyes slightly, Yi Chen then flew towards the corner of the sect entrance plaza. In the corner of the sect entrance plaza, a little girl about 12 years old was encircled by 6 Heavenly Net sect disciples. This little girl had a childlike face and a slightly immature figure, her hair tied into 2 braids, and she was dressed in the manner of a maid, but her eyes sparkled with vivacity. At the moment, surrounded by the 6 Heavenly Net sect disciples, the little girl showed no fear in her eyes. Instead, she shouted crisply at the 6. What are you trying to do? Could it be that even the mighty Heavenly Net sect disciples intend to bully a little girl like me? The little girl's shouts attracted the attention of many Qingyun's sect disciples in the plaza, but when they saw it was Heavenly Net sect disciples surrounding her, they quickly walked faster, steering clear of this problematic spot. The reaction of these Qingyun sect disciples made the little girl pout her lips. Seeing this approach ineffective, her eyes spun as she pondered another plan, thinking to herself, when I visited the Qingyun sect several times before to deliver silver to the young master, I never realized that Qingyun sect's disciples were such cowards. What to do? Now these Heavenly Net sect disciples have surrounded me. They probably became suspicious of me for inquiring about the young master these past few days. As the girl was considering ways to escape, the pale-faced youth leading the 6 Heavenly Net sect disciples, watching the lively eyes of the girl they surrounded, huffed, "Little girl, stop thinking of tricks. We've been watching you for quite some time. Speak. What is your relationship with Yi Chen? Do you know where Yi Chen is right now?" Upon hearing the pale-faced youth mention Yi Chen, the little girl's complexion subtly changed. She looked at the pale-faced youth, blinked, and said with a smile, Yi Chen? Who's Yi Chen? I've never heard that name before. Humph, don't play dumb with me. You've been asking Qingyun sect disciples about Yi Chen in a roundabout way these past few days. You really think we don't know? If you don't talk, don't blame me for not being polite. I don't know. When I say I don't know, I mean it. The little girl, standing her ground with a defiant look, responded to the 6 Heavenly Net sect disciples. It seems we must show you some color before you realize we're not pushovers. The pale-faced youth, with a clawing motion, reached directly for the little girl's arm. In that claw, true chi flashed like cold light, revealing deadly intent. The little girl had no signs of true chi surging within her body. Yet the pale-faced youth used a killing move, apparently intending to rip off the little girl's arm with a single claw. How ruthless the pale-faced youth was. As the white-faced youth made his grab, the little girl cried out, "Oh no," in her heart, finding herself unable to dodge. Terrified, she closed her eyes tightly, her long eyelashes trembling incessantly. After all, she was just a 12 or 13-year-old girl. Despite her sharpness, she was frightened in the face of this bloody killing move. However, as the little girl closed her eyes, she felt no pain in her arm but instead heard a mysterious cry of pain. That cry of pain, could it be from the pale-faced youth who tried to grab her arm? With this thought flashing through her mind, the little girl involuntarily opened her eyes. When she did, She was shocked to see the hand that was reaching for her now flying into the air. The pale-faced youth was covering his severed hand, screaming in agony. "Did someone save me?" The little girl widened her eyes and looked around. Then she saw a familiar yet somewhat strange figure coming towards her. "Is this my young master? Isn't my young master only at the first level of true chi? How did he become so powerful?" The little girl stretched out her hand, rubbed her eyes vigorously, and looked again at the approaching figure. When she saw the smiling face of the figure, she couldn't believe her eyes and exclaimed in wonder, "Young master, is it really you?" Chapter 56 Murderous Intent. The disciples of the Heavenly Net sect that had surrounded the little girl also saw the figure that suddenly appeared. When they saw his face, these disciples and the little girl alike revealed expressions of disbelief. "Yi-chun? Is that Yi-chun?" They had thought that Yi-chun would hide in 10,000 Beasts Mountain and not dare to show his face. They had thought that Yi-chun was captured, his chi-si destroyed, and that he was brought back to Qingyun's sect in a miserable state. They even thought that Yi-chun, knowing he couldn't escape pursuit, would obediently come back and beg for mercy, kowtowing and asking for their elders' forgiveness. But they had never considered that Yi-chun would return to Qingyun's sect directly like this, all by himself. Not only did he return, but he also took action immediately, injuring one of them. This was clearly a provocation to all the Heavenly Net sect disciples present. It was a direct challenge to Zhou Yuntian, the Heavenly Net sect elder still in Qingyun's sect. Was Yi-chun actually this audacious? These Heavenly Net sect disciples couldn't believe it at all. They wanted to shout, to call others to capture Yi-chun, to pass the news of Yi-chun's appearance to their elder Zhou Yuntian. But none of them dared to speak. Just now, Yi-chun had easily chopped off the leading man's hand, such a powerful attack that it frightened them into not daring to make a move. For a moment, all the Heavenly Net sect disciples were as muted as cicadas in winter, bringing an eerie silence to the place. Even the fair-faced youth whose hand had been chopped off by Yi-chun, upon realizing who their assailant was, abruptly stopped his cries of pain and frantically retreated while holding his severed hand. The person who had lopped off the hand of that Heavenly Net sect disciple and was now approaching the little girl was none other than Yi-chun. The moment he spotted the little girl, Yi-chun immediately flew toward her, because to him this little girl was extremely familiar. This little girl was Tower, Yi-chun's personal maid before he had joined Qingyun's sect. Over the years of Yi-chun's absence from the clan, it had always been Tower who came to Qingyun's sect to deliver silver coins and letters to him. Seeing Tower now surrounded by several Heavenly Net sect disciples, with one even attempting to snatch her arm, how could Yi-chun allow such a thing to happen? He struck instantly, sending that person's hand flying off. Afterward, he paid no attention to the expressions of the Heavenly Net sect disciples and walked straight toward Tower. "Young master, is it you, really you?" Tower, the little girl, ran up to Yi-chun and excitedly looked him up and down with a glowing face. The sudden appearance of Yi-chun before her, with such formidable strength, was something she hadn't anticipated at all. But just after she had taken a few glances at Yi-chun, Tower seemed to think of something, and her face abruptly changed. "Young master, why have you come back? Run, run away. Tower is here to find an opportunity to tell you not to come back. Don't let anyone discover your whereabouts. Your Lord Father and Lady Mother, they've all been captured and brought here to Qingyun's sect. The man can fly and burrow through the earth. He's too terrifying. Young master, he also wants to kill you." Tower, who was speaking anxiously, was out of breath when Yi-chun suddenly interrupted her hurried words. Looking at Tower's eyes, which were so anxious they had reddened a bit, Yi-chun smiled and said, "Tower, stop talking. I already know about these things. It's me who has brought trouble upon father and mother, and you. This time I've come back is to resolve this matter." "But, young master," Tower stomped her feet anxiously, "you can't handle that man. The martial arts masters in our family say he's like a deity who can fly and burrow through the earth. Even they wouldn't dare to provoke him." Tower explained frantically about the terror that was Zhou Yuntian. Clearly, When Zhou Yuntian had gone to Qingyang City and captured Yi Chen's parents, he had terrified the little girl greatly. But even though she was this frightened, Tower still risked danger by running to Qin Yun's sect to pass on the message to him, which touched Yi Chen even further. This was the little girl who had grown up with him, who, like his father and mother, was extremely good to him. This matter should come to an end. Yi Chen looked at Tower, whose little face was flushed with anxiety, and patted the little girl's shoulder. Then, he turned his gaze toward the Heavenly Net sect disciples, who were as quiet as cicadas, and spoke indifferently to them. Your Heavenly Net sect elder Zhou Yuntian wants to capture me, right? Go tell him that I, Yi Chen, am back. Let's settle our affairs directly, without involving anyone else. Go tell him that I, Yi Chen, am back. Yi Chen's words stunned the Heavenly Net sect disciples for a moment, before they came to their senses. This Yi Chen was openly challenging their elder. Has Yi Chen consumed the gall of a bear and a leopard to dare challenge the elder? Fine, he wants us to pass on a message, so we shall. These Heavenly Net sect disciples were simultaneously frightened and mocking of Yi Chen. Frightened of another attack from him, and mocking his apparent ignorance of the harshness of reality. Soon, their loud shouts spread across the entire main gate square. Yi Chen has appeared. Hurry and inform the elder. Yi Chen is right here in the main gate square. Boom! 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 Following their shouts, groups of Heavenly Net sect disciples flew in from various parts of Qingyun sect, landing on the main gate square and surrounding Yi Chen. And the news of Yi Chen's return to Qingyun sect also spread through the outer sect disciple area on the outer mountain of Qingyun sect, reaching all corners of the outer and inner peaks and to the main hall of the inner peak, Qingyun Hall. Inside Qingyun sect, within the main hall of the inner peak, Qingyun Hall, Zhou Yuntian was sitting in the grand hall chair, conversing with the elders and sect master of Qingyun sect. Report to the elder. Yi Chen has appeared. A frantic reporting voice suddenly shouted from outside, and the content of this voice made Zhou Yuntian, who was seated, stand up abruptly. Has Yi Chen appeared? Good. Good. It seems that capturing his parents has indeed forced him to show himself. Zhou Yuntian laughed heartily, his blood robe swirling as he transformed into a beam of escaping light and flew outwards. Arriving outside, Zhou Yuntian grabbed the person who brought the news. Where is Yi Chen now? He is at the entrance plaza of the outer mountain of the Qingyun sect, the disciple hastily replied. The entrance plaza? A chilling intent shone in Zhou Yuntian's eyes as his blood robe swirled again, turning into a streak of blood light and shooting towards the Qingyun sect's entrance plaza. Yi Chen is back? In the Qingyun hall, the Qingyun sect's sect master and elders looked at each other, their faces somewhat astonished. Let's go take a look. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These figures also transformed into beams of escaping light, following behind Zhou Yuntian, heading towards the entrance plaza. Jing, I heard Yi Chen has returned to the Qingyun sect alone, and he's at the entrance plaza. Now, the people from the Heavenly Net sect have completely surrounded Yi Chen, and even Zhou Yuntian, an elder of the Heavenly Net sect, has already gone to that entrance plaza. In the mountain peaks where the disciples of the outer sect of Qingyun sect resided, a tall young girl was about to walk outside with a food container when a sturdy young boy suddenly barged in and spoke to her. Bang! The tall girl's food container fell straight to the ground. Hong man, are you saying Yi Chen? Yi Chen, he's back. Yes. Jing, I'm afraid it's bad news. Yi Chen is so smart, why would he suddenly come back? This place has become a dragon's lair and a tiger's den where they want to capture him. The sturdy youth's face was full of worry. The tall girl and the sturdy youth were none other than Lin Jing and Hong Man, who had once joined Yi Chen in hunting beasts at 10,000 Beasts Mountain. I'm going to have a look. Upon hearing the news about Yi Chen, Lin Jing could no longer contain herself. She picked up the food container, checked that the food inside was intact, and shoved it into Hong Man's hands. Hong Man, take this food container to my uncle and aunt. Bribe those Heavenly Net sect disciples guarding my uncle and aunt with some patterned silver. I'm going to the entrance plaza to see. After speaking, Lin Jing hurried towards the Outer Peaks entrance plaza. After running a few steps, she seemed to remember something and quickly turned to Hong Man. Remember, don't tell my uncle and aunt about Yi Chen's return, to keep them from worrying. The recipients of the food container that she wanted Hong Man to deliver were none other than Yi Chen's father and mother, who were being held by the Qingyun sect. Yi Chen, you must not be in any trouble. You absolutely must not be in trouble. At the moment when Yi Chen appeared in the Qingyun sect's entrance plaza and openly challenged Zhou Yuntian, an elder of the Heavenly Net sect. High above in the sky of 10,000 Beasts Mountain, a dazzling beam of escaping light was streaking towards the Qingyun sect at high speed. Within this beam of light was a beautiful young girl with hair cascading like a waterfall down to her waist. This girl was none other than Zhang Yao, who had left the Taishan sect to investigate news of Yi Chen in 10,000 Beasts Mountain. After investigating around 10,000 Beasts Mountain, she finally learned of the trouble Yi Chen had encountered through the words of the many Heavenly Net sect disciples there. When she realized that Yi Chen's opponent was Zhou Yuntian, a mid-stage Spirit Sea Realm strongman from the Heavenly Net sect, Zhang Yao's heart sank into a panic. The only way for Yi Chen to deal with the mid-stage Spirit Sea Realm strongman Zhou Yuntian was to unleash the second battle capability of his flying sword, causing it to suffer damage to its spirit. If Zhou Yuntian had other trump cards, Yi Chen might even have to use the third battle capability of his flying sword, causing it to self-destruct. Whether it was the spirit damage to the flying sword or a self-destruction, it would be a significant loss for Yi Chen, potentially leaving him seriously injured. How could Zhang Yao allow such a thing to happen? Yi Chen, wait for me. You must wait for me. If that Zhou Yuntian dares to hurt you, even if he is an elder of the Heavenly Net sect, I will make him pay with blood for blood. No, you won't get hurt. You absolutely won't be in trouble. Zhang Yao, speeding through the sky toward the Qingyun sect, had a look of concern in her beautiful eyes, and her hair that reached her waist flared wildly as she accelerated even faster. At the Qingyun sect's entrance plaza. Young master, I'm afraid. Tower clutched Yi Chen's robe tightly, her eyes full of worry as she looked at the Heavenly Net sect disciples closing in on her and Yi Chen. Don't worry, Tower. Everything will be all right. Yi Chen patted the little girl's shoulder and said with a light smile. As he was speaking, he suddenly looked up towards the sky above the inner mountain of the Qingyun sect. A streak of blood-colored light was rapidly approaching from outside the mountain. Zhou Yuntian, is that you? Yi Chen eyed the blood-colored light, a sharp glint flickering in his gaze. At the same time, the eyes within that blood light, sensing his gaze, also looked towards Yi Chen. In those eyes, there was a piercing intent to kill, bursting forth. Chapter 57. Making a move. Boom! The vigorous true qi surged like a blood-red flame streaking across the sky, and in a matter of breaths, it flew from the skies above Qingyun sect's inner mountain to the outer mountain skies. Flying and earth escaping. A Spirit Sea Realm powerhouse. The Elder has come. The Elder has personally come to this outer mountain. From heaven to earth, no one can save Yi Chen now. In the sect's gate square, thousands of disciples had also noticed the blood-red light speeding through the sky, each lifting their heads to watch. The disciples of Heavenly Net sect were especially elated. Their own elder Zhou Yuntian, a mid-stage Spirit Sea Realm powerhouse, had arrived in person. Surrounded by them, Yi Chen had even less chance of escaping. With the elder personally intervening to avenge the death of his son, they would surely receive rewards for their contribution. In their eyes, Yi Chen's life meant nothing at all. That's him, young master. He's the one who abducted the mistress. Tower, the little girl standing beside Yi Chen, looked with both fear and anger at the blood-red light coming swiftly from the sky. While everyone's attention was captured by the swiftly approaching blood-red light, as Yi Chen's eyes sparkled towards it, a fierce wind howled in the sky and the light, burning like blood-red flames, was now above the square of the sect's gate. The streak of light flew over the square and didn't stop. Instead, it charged towards Yi Chen in the crowd. A rumbling voice boomed. Yi Chen, you killed my child. Today, I will cripple you first, then have you slashed by 1,000 cuts. Just as the voice resounded, a mighty gust surged from within the light, flinging those around Yi Chun hundreds of feet away, and at the same time, an enormous hand that spanned dozens of feet formed instantly, smacking straight towards Yi Chun. Seeing the giant hand descending from the sky, all the disciples blown away turned pale with fright. Is he intending to kill Yi Chun with a single blow? All those knocked down to the ground didn't bother to get up. Their eyes were fixed on where the giant hand was descending. In that spot, there stood only Yi Chun. With his divine consciousness enveloping his surroundings, Yi Chun's surging true qi erupted from within him at the exact moment the blood-red light burst forth. His true qi encircled the little girl tower, whisking her 100 feet away, to keep her from harm by Zhou Yuntian. Then, facing the gigantic hand alone, Yi Chun clenched his palm, and a yellow talisman paper appeared in his hand, before he shot it outwards. The talisman, catching fire without any wind, shot towards the sky with a shrill and terrifying whistle emanating from it, instantly resounding across the entire Sex Gate Square. Just as the enormous hand in the blood-red light was about to land on Yi Chun's head, a blood-red spear over 30 meters long formed amidst a backwash of surging true qi and clashed explosively with the giant hand. Boom! 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 Instantly, the blood-red spear and the true qi carried by the giant hand collided, setting off a thunderous explosion over the square. In the midst of the true qi explosion, a terrifying wind swept through, visibly dispersing energy waves in all directions, even shattering the huge green stones of the square to pieces. The disciples earlier swept aside felt the terrifying energy wave approaching, and their faces changed as they retreated hastily, fleeing the explosion's radius. Afterward, they turned their gaze back to the epicenter of the true qi explosion. When they saw Yi Chun, who had faced the gigantic hand's assault unscathed, standing upright, every onlooker around the square's perimeter opened their mouths in disbelief. He blocked it. He blocked an attack from a Spirit Sea Realm expert? Looking at the clash of true qi, Yi Chun didn't seem at a disadvantage at all. He can match a Spirit Sea Realm powerhouse. These retreated disciples stared at the center of the devastated area, spanning dozens of meters across the square, and at the young man standing at the heart of it, exclaiming in disbelief. In the sky, Zhou Yuntian's attack reached the level of the Spirit Sea Realm, which did not surprise them, but the outcome of their previous clash clearly showed that Yi Chun was not at a disadvantage, demonstrating the same level of combat power as a Spirit Sea Realm expert. Yi Chun, a mere youngster in the True Qi Realm, had actually managed to unleash an attack equivalent to that of the Spirit Sea Realm. How could this not astonish the disciples of the various sects? Spirit Talisman? Yi Chun, it was indeed you who killed my hire, and you took the life-saving Spirit Talisman I gave him. In the sky above, the blood-colored fleeing light dissipated, revealing a figure clad in a blood robe and resembling a desiccated corpse. It was none other than Zhou Yuntian, the elder of the Heavenly Net sect. At this moment, around Zhou Yuntian, a mighty and terrifying true qi churned and swirled. Merely the surging aura he emitted surpassed all the true qi in the bodies of the disciples present in the true qi realm, not to mention the even more massive true qi turned into spiritual liquid in his Spirit Sea. A Spirit Sea realm powerhouse. This was the terrifying individual who had surpassed the true qi realm and reached the Spirit Sea realm. The mere presence of his true qi aura caused countless true qi realm disciples to quake in fear, their bravery chilled to the core. Once Zhou Yuntian appeared, his bloodshot eyes turned towards the fading giant spear shadow that had shattered the towering palm, with cold light swirling in his gaze. He immediately recognized that the paper talisman Yi Chun had used to fend off his towering palm strike was one of the 3 life-saving spirit talismans he had once given to Zhou Hai, a talisman paper with the attack power of the Spirit Sea Realm. So it's that life-saving paper talisman. What of it? Zhou Hai died by my hand. Naturally, I can take and use his belongings as I please. Standing in the square before the mountain gate, Yi Chun fearlessly looked at Zhou Yuntian and spoke out loud. Indeed, what he had used was exactly one of the spirit talisman papers he had taken from Zhou Hai. There were 3 in total, with Zhou Hai having used one, and Yi Chun had acquired the remaining 2. Now, he had used one of those two paper talismans to block Zhou Yuntian's first strike. Yi Chen, you have succeeded in infuriating me. Hearing Yi Chen's admission of killing Zhou Hai and announcing intent to freely use Zhou Hai's belongings, Zhou Yuntian flew into a towering rage. My last palm strike didn't even exert 1/10 of my strength. Do you think, with a spirit talisman I made, you can block me? Zhou Yuntian stared at Yi Chen, with murderous intent surging in his heart. He didn't want Yi Chen to die too easily. Yet Yi Chen's words had provoked him so much he wished to kill him with a single palm strike. Zhou Yuntian, you have succeeded in angering me as well. Yi Chen looked up at Zhou Yuntian in the sky, with killing intent surging in his eyes equally. I have never seen such a shameless person in the Spirit Sea realm, someone who doesn't even spare ordinary mortals. You truly disgrace the title of the Spirit Sea. Don't you want to kill me? I'm standing right here. If you can kill me, then that's your skill. Don't drag my parents into this. Let's settle our grudges between the two of us. Come on. Don't talk about using 1/10 of your strength. Use all your strength, by all means. Yi Chen looked at Zhou Yuntian, utterly unafraid. Yi Chen and Zhou Yuntian, one on the ground and one in the sky. Their eyes met and murderous intent filled the air between them simultaneously. Such a scene, happening between an individual in the True Qi realm and a mid-stage Spirit Sea realm expert, was truly unprecedented. Not only did it leave the onlooking Qingyun sect disciples immensely shocked, but even the disciples of the Heavenly Net sect couldn't help but admire Yi Chen's courage. Many of them were even at a higher stage in the True Qi realm than Yi Chen, but none had the courage to speak to a Spirit Sea realm individual like that. Yi Chen was truly audacious to the extreme. Chapter 58 Madness. Boom! 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 Just as Yi Chen confronted Zhou Yuntian, 8 streaks of light flew through the sky, landing next to the figure of Zhou Yuntian, who stood in the void, revealing their figures. These 8 people were none other than the sect master and the 7 elders of the Qingyun sect. As soon as the sect master and elders of the Qingyun sect landed in the sky, they all looked towards Yi Chen simultaneously. The terrifying wave of energy provoked by Yi Chen's lightning-fast exchange with Zhou Yuntian had been clearly witnessed by all of them, who were following behind Zhou Yuntian. None of the 8 had anticipated that this nominal disciple of their sect could react to Zhou Yuntian's attack so swiftly and remain unscathed under his assault. Even if, as Zhou Yuntian claimed, Yi Chen had relied on a spirit talisman to withstand the attack, the time it took to activate the talisman and defend against the heaven-supporting giant hand was nearly instantaneous. Such a reaction speed, even among the strongest within the True Qi realm, the 12th layer of True Qi, there were few who could achieve it. They observed that Yi Chen was only at the 6th layer of True Qi. How could he possibly react so quickly? This truly shocked them. Seeing Yi Chen facing the mid-stage Spirit Sea realm expert Zhou Yuntian without fear, a thought even flickered through their minds. Could this youth, in addition to his incredibly quick reactions, have other means to challenge Zhou Yuntian? Otherwise, how would he dare speak to Zhou Yuntian like this? Impossible! There absolutely can't be any other means that would allow someone in the True Qi realm to contend with a mid-stage Spirit Sea realm expert. I'm afraid that this Yi Chen is merely bluffing to the very end. After giving Yi Chen a deep look, these individuals all shook their heads simultaneously, finding the ridiculous notion that had just crossed their minds laughable. True Qi realm challenging the mid-stage Spirit Sea realm? Such a scenario was something they had never witnessed happen. They also couldn't believe such a situation would occur. Presumably Yi Chen is just bluffing, waiting for us to back him up. However, he's likely to be disappointed. The sect master and elders of the Qingyun sect looked at Yi Chen, murmuring in their hearts. Sect master, Elder Wan, Elder Lin, Elder Wang. On the sect's plaza, disciples of the Qingyun sect, seeing their rarely seen sect master and elders all appearing in the plaza's sky, began to bow and salute them from below. Out of the 9 Spirit Sea realm experts of the Qingyun sect, except for Xiaolong, the foremost inner disciple who had just entered the Spirit Sea realm, the other 8 had all gathered. 8 Spirit Sea realm experts, together with Zhou Yuntian, the mid-stage Spirit Sea realm master, now stood in the sky above the plaza. This was a scene that the Qingyun sect had never seen before. Watching the 9 masters focus their attention on that youth, countless disciples felt their hearts surge with excitement. If they could, like Yi Chun, draw the gaze of 9 Spirit Sea Realm masters, they felt that even dying would be worth it. In the sky above, with the sect master and the 7 elders arriving simultaneously, Zhou Yuntian couldn't just attack directly anymore, though he had long since reached an understanding with these 8 over the matter of Yi Chun. Still, at Qingyun sect, in the presence of all these eyes at the sect's plaza, he needed to show some respect to the Qingyun sect's sect master and elders. Elder Luo Kuan, as for this nominal disciple Yi Chun of your sect, who killed my child, what do you think should be done? Zhou Yuntian, standing in the void, boomed his voice in all directions, asking sect master Luo Kuan of the Qingyun sect. Hearing Zhou Yuntian's question, all the Qingyun sect disciples on the plaza turned their eyes towards their sect master. Yi Chun was a disciple of their Qingyun sect. They too wanted to know, under such circumstances, whether their sect master would protect his own disciple or would he yield under the might of the Heavenly Net sect and give up on Yi Chun. Yi Chun also looked towards these grand figures of the Qingyun sect whom he had never met before. Seeing these 8 people standing alongside Zhou Yuntian, Yi Chun had already faintly anticipated some outcomes, but he still wanted to see how the Qingyun sect's sect master would respond. In the sky above, sect master Luo Kuan of the Qingyun sect, his eyes converging on Yi Chun. He was somewhat surprised and taken aback by this youth who was only a nominal disciple of their sect, a prodigy who was rumored to have slain Zhou Hai, a 7th-layer True Qi practitioner, with a mere 5th-layer True Qi, and who had enraged Zhou Yuntian to madness and just now had incredibly quick reactions to block Zhou Yuntian's strike. He knew that Yi Chun was likely a genius that had been buried within their sect. However, what of it if he was a genius? Luo Kuan had seen countless fallen geniuses. Compared to his relationship with the Spirit Sea Realm expert Zhou Yuntian, compared to a 7th-ranked sect like the Heavenly Net sect, even if Yi Chun was as strong a genius as any, he was still an unripe one. To give up on him wasn't such a big deal. After his gaze lingered on Yi Chun for a few moments, Luo Kuan turned his head towards Zhou Yuntian, smiling lightly as he said, "Murder pays for life. This Yi Chun, I leave to Zhou to deal with. He is merely a nominal disciple, not even counted as a formal disciple of our sect. Now, I announce, Yi Chun is expelled from the sect. From now on, he is no longer a person of our Qingyun sect." Sect Master Luo Kuan of the Qingyun sect didn't speak a word in defense of Yi Chun, and he didn't even show a hint of pleading. With a wave of his hand, he had severed all ties with Yi Chun. Clearly, he had completely given up on Yi Chun. Luo Kuan's words suddenly swept a sense of sorrow through the hearts of the disciples gathered in the Qingyun sect square, like a hare mourning the death of a fox. The sect master. Today, because of external pressure, their sect master could abandon Yi Chun, and tomorrow he might just as readily abandon them. For a moment, the Qingyun sect disciples eerily quieted down. Yi Chun, hearing Luo Kuan's words, clenched his fists abruptly, then relaxed them. So be it. Such a sect, I have no reason to remain attached to. With this thought flashing through his mind, the shadow that had suddenly arisen in his heart dispersed quite a bit. A Qingyun sect like this, not worth joining. He, Yi Chun, from this moment forth, would have nothing more to do with Qingyun sect. Yi Chen's gaze shifted from Luo Kuan, the sect master of Qingyun sect, directly onto Zhou Yuntian. Zhou Yuntian, all this you've said, isn't it just to kill me under the guise of righteousness? Your son can chase after me to kill, but I can't fight back to kill him? Does his life, by nature, have more value than mine? In the end, it's all because you abuse your power, holding others' lives in no regard. You want to let strength do the talking, then show me your strength. All else is empty talk. Yi Chen directly addressed Zhou Yuntian. Strength? In the sky, Zhou Yuntian looked down at Yi Chen, his ridicule unceasing. By now, even the Qingyun sect's sect master no longer concerned himself with this Yi Chun. Zhou Yuntian didn't care what tricks Yi Chun might still play. Yes, I abused the power I possess, so what about it? I'm a Spirit Sea Realm powerhouse. My son's life does, of course, have more value than yours. By killing my higher, you should have known this day would come. Had you obediently accepted death back then, you wouldn't have dragged your parents into this. Yi Chun, let me tell you, today I will not only execute you, but also make your parents accompany you in death. The lives of all three of you lowlifes will soothe the spirit of my higher in heaven. Boom! As Zhou Yuntian spoke, he waved the sleeve of his blood robe, and a surge of true qi enveloped the area. The immense pressure made it difficult for all the disciples in the square to even breathe. However, what made it even harder for the disciples to breathe was what Zhou Yuntian had said. Zhou Yuntian was determined to kill not only Yi Chun, but also Yi Chen's father and mother. Completely. Even the disciples of the Heavenly Net sect were shocked. They had thought their elder captured Yi Chen's parents to lure Yi Chun into showing himself, but now it seemed their elder had intended to kill from the very beginning. Boom! As Zhou Yuntian uttered those words, Yi Chen's heart felt as though it had been struck by a bolt of lightning. Zhou Yuntian had captured his parents and now, even after he appeared, planned to execute them as well. This completely crossed the line for Yi Chun. Was Zhou Yuntian arrogant or mad, truly thinking himself unbeatable? Boom! Yi Chen's complexion turned ashen in an instant, and from the energy center between his eyebrows, a vast and boundless sword chi spirit liquid crazily surged into the flying sword, Crimson Fire. Zhou Yuntian, you are far too presumptuous. Even at the risk of damaging my life-linked flying sword, even if I can't kill you, Zhou Yuntian, I'll destroy it by self-detonation to take you down. Crimson Fire. Prepare for battle. True Qi roared around Yi Chen's body, enveloping him like raging flames, preparing him for the fight. He was ready for battle, waiting for Zhou Yuntian's momentary lapse to unleash the three great powers of the flying sword and slay Zhou Yuntian. Zhou Yuntian's words had ignited Yi Chen's resolve to risk everything. Even if he ended up injured by the self-explosion of his flying sword, he would not let his parents suffer or die at Zhou Yuntian's hands. Heaven and earth. Zhou Yuntian and Yi Chun were already brimming with the intent to fight. The next instant could be the moment of the thunderous strike. But just then, suddenly, a clear and piercing eagle's cry rang through the sky. Afterward, the voice of a young girl echoed across the entire Qingyun sect square. An elder of the Heavenly Net sect? What grandeur indeed! Even I, as the sect master of Taishan sect, would not dare to claim my life more noble by measure. Boom! Accompanying the young voice that spread in all directions, a majestic and extraordinary giant white eagle, carrying a 12 or 13-year-old sword-bearing girl, shot across the sky, arriving above the square. Chapter 59 Visitor from the Taishan sect. All the people on the square at the mountain gate looked toward the eagle-riding girl who had suddenly appeared. Even the 9 Spirit Sea Realm experts in the sky, Zhou Yuntian and the 8 Qingyun sect elders and sect leader, were no exception. The girl's voice was still echoing in all directions, and the words Taishan sect brought a complete silence to the entire square at the mountain gate, which had been teeming with a murderous atmosphere. Taishan sect. This girl. She's actually from the Taishan sect? Disciples from Heavenly Net sect and Qingyun sect on the square at the mountain gate, looking at the sword-bearing girl who rode the eagle in the sky, all had their hearts pounding. As disciples of the 36 sects in the eastern region of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, they were all too familiar with the words Taishan sect. Taishan sect, the top-ranked great sect in the eastern region of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, was a place they all once dreamed of joining. Unfortunately, their strength was simply not enough to qualify for entry into the Taishan sect. Despite this, they often sought out news about the Taishan sect and recited stories about its deeds. The Heavenly Net sect and the Qingyun sect were located south of 10,000 Beasts Mountain, while the Taishan sect had an expanse of territory to the west of 10,000 Beasts Mountain, with Taishan sect disciples seldom venturing south of the mountain. Now, seeing this sword-bearing girl from the Taishan sect with their own eyes, how could they not be shocked? Not only were these sect disciples shocked, Even the arrogant and domineering Heavenly Net sect elder Zhou Yuntian trembled at the mention of the Taishan sect. His arrogance before Qingyun sect was partly because he was a mid-phase Spirit Sea realm expert and partly because he came from the 7th rank Heavenly Net sect. Qingyun sect, being just an 8th rank sect with its strongest expertise in the Spirit Sea realm, was hardly worth mentioning in Zhou Yuntian's eyes. However, no matter how arrogant and domineering he would not dare to disrespect the Taishan sect because it was the #1 sect among the 36 sects in the eastern region of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, a 6th rank sect that was dozens of times more powerful than the 7th rank Heavenly Net sect. If Taishan sect wished to destroy Heavenly Net sect, it would take no more than the turning of a hand. There were countless people within the Taishan sect stronger than Zhou Yuntian. To be arrogant in front of the Taishan sect, Zhou Yuntian simply didn't have the courage. Taishan sect, how could someone from there come here? Could it be she has come for Yi Chun? Yi Chun is nothing but a minor true Qi realm disciple, and within Qingyun sect, he is only a nominal disciple. How could he be connected with the Taishan sect? The girl's words clearly intended to protect Yi Chun, which made Zhou Yuntian dare not make any rash moves. For a moment, the murderous-looking Zhou Yuntian's complexion became somewhat unpredictable. Not just Zhou Yuntian, but even Qingyun's sect master Luo Kuan and the other 7 elders standing beside Zhou Yuntian. When they heard the words Taishan sect from the mouth of the sword-bearing girl who had ridden the eagle, and heard her defending Yi Chun, their faces all changed dramatically. Previously they could abandon Yi Chun because he had no significant backing and was simply incomparable to Zhou Yuntian. But now, if Yi Chun truly had a significant connection with the Taishan sect, even with 10 times their courage, they would not dare let any harm come to him within Qingyun sect. Could it be that Yi Chen's earlier confidence and fearlessness, even in face of Zhou Yuntian, was because of the Taishan sect? But he didn't mention the Taishan sect earlier. Otherwise, we wouldn't have pushed him into such a situation. Or is it that he has a connection only with this sword-bearing girl, with no substantial ties to the Taishan sect? Luo Kuan, the sect leader of Qingyun sect, and the other 7 elders sized up the sword-bearing girl and Yi Chun, speculating about their relationship. Heaven and earth were silent, and at this moment Yi Chen, gazing at the sword-bearing girl who appeared suddenly on the back of a hawk, was also somewhat surprised. The Taishan sect? Could it be because of... Yi Chun was pondering when the girl riding the hawk, the focus of thousands in the sect square, lightly flapped the wings of the mystical white hawk beneath her, and flew directly next to him. And the girl riding the hawk jumped down next to Yi Chun, blinked her big eyes, curiously sized up Yi Chun, and asked in a soft voice, "Are you Yi Chun?" The Yi Chun who entered the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode. The 1,000 Lotus Cave abode? Upon hearing the words 1,000 Lotus Cave abode, Yi Chun was startled, and his thoughts immediately turned to a girl of incredible beauty. Looking back at the sword-bearing girl before him, he sobered up and realized, could it be that you were sent by Zhang Yao? Apart from Zhang Yao, Yi Chen didn't recognize anyone else from the Taishan sect. The sudden appearance of this sword-bearing girl led Yi Chen to guess she might be connected to Zhang Yao, and now, with the girl mentioning the words 1,000 Lotus Cave abode, it further confirmed in his mind that the girl's arrival must be related to Zhang Yao. You really are that Yi Chen? The sword-bearing girl's big eyes lit up when she heard the name Zhang Yao, and a smile appeared on her face. I have finally found you, Yi Chen. I knew it. The young man whom Sister Zhang Yao cares so much about couldn't be an ordinary person. Indeed, even in front of so many Spirit Sea realm experts, you remain so undaunted. Yi Chen, don't worry. I am here under Sister Zhang Yao's orders to find you, to ensure your safety. Whoever wants to be your enemy will become my enemy, Lu Channer's enemy, and Sister Zhang Yao's enemy. The girl who suddenly appeared on the back of the hawk was none other than Channer, dispatched by Zhang Yao from the Taishan sect to Qingyun sect to seek out Yi Chen and ensure his safety. After Lu Channer left the cave abode, she hurried toward Qingyun sect while learning about the young man called Yi Chen from the jade slip provided by Zhang Yao, which contained information about him. The more she read from the jade slip, the more she wanted to meet Yi Chen. From the information in the jade slip, Lu Chaner learned that at just 15 years old, Yi Chun was able to comprehend sword intent and had entered a mysterious cave abode, the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, with her sister Jiang Yao. Not only that, but Yi Chun had also broken through the trials of the cave abode one after another, creating great miracles, and had even comprehended several types of sword intent within the true Qi realm. Even her sister Jiang Yao was not a match for Yi Chun in the cultivation of the sword Dao. The more Lu Chaner learned about Yi Chun, the more she wanted to see for herself what this young man, who even her elegant and beautiful sister Jiang Yao was moved by, was really like. When she arrived at Qingyun sect and saw a young man standing alone in the center of the crowd in the square, surrounded by the oppressive presence of 9 Spirit Sea realm experts from a distance in the sky, she immediately knew that this was the Yi Chun she was looking for. As she flew closer and heard it confirmed, she realized that this was indeed Yi Chun, the one her sister Jiang Yao had sent her with the Taishin command to protect at all costs. Upon seeing Yi Chun enveloped by the murderous intent of Zhou Yuntian, a mid-stage Spirit Sea realm expert, as if the two were about to fight a battle of life and death, Lu Chaner finally understood why her sister Jiang Yao had been so frantic. Her sister Jiang Yao must have sensed that Yi Chun was in danger, which was why she had sent Lu Chaner to rush to Qingyun sect. Yi Chun, he really was in great trouble. Chapter 60 Time Mysterious, The Hidden Hand. Seeing this situation, Lu Chaner of course did not hesitate anymore. She directly spoke out, using the name of the Taishin sect to intimidate Zhou Yuntian while also swiftly descending beside Yi Chun. Having confirmed Yi Chun's identity, she naturally had to protect Yi Chun's safety as her sister Jiang Yao had entrusted her to do. Even if Yi Chun faced a joint attack, she would stand shoulder to shoulder with him in battle. Though Lu Chaner was only 13 years old and her true Qi realm was just cultivated to the 7th level of true Qi, as a disciple under Fairy Jialuo, a supreme figure of the Taishin sect, and as Jiang Yao's junior sister, she also possessed a few formidable skills. Even if she couldn't help Yi Chun deal with Zhou Yuntian, who was at the middle stage of the Spirit Sea realm, she had some confidence in leading Yi Chun to escape unscathed. Now, faced with Zhou Yuntian, whose killing intent was clear, Yi Chun finally had a significant reinforcement. Jiang Yao sent you to find me? To protect my safety? How would she know that I am in danger? Hearing the words of the sword-carrying girl in front of him who called herself Lu Chaner, Yi Chun was also taken aback. He had not expected that the danger he faced would be known to Jiang Yao. What Yi Chun did not know was that the twin flying swords he and Jiang Yao had obtained in the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water, complemented each other and possessed a mysterious connection. His agitated spirit caused Crimson Fire to react violently, which allowed the distant Jiang Yao to sense that something was amiss. How would Jiang Yao know that you are in danger? Lu Chaner shook her small head. I don't know either. All I know is that Jiang Yao was very frantic, and she told me I must protect you. Lu Chaner's words warmed Yi Chun's heart. Jiang Yao, the girl who had joined him in braving the challenges of the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, still cared so much for him even after returning to the Taishin sect. In the sky above, when Zhou Yuntian saw the girl on the eagle descend in front of Yi Chun and speak with him in a very close manner, his expression grew increasingly ugly. He had not expected that the person from the Taishin sect actually had a connection with Yi Chun. After a change in expression, Zhou Yuntian spoke to Lu Chaner. Little girl, you claim to be from the Taishin sect and have come here, but what for? This Yi Chun has a blood feud with me. If you have nothing else, please step aside, lest I accidentally injure you when I kill him. Even if he feared the reputation of the Taishin sect, if Lu Chaner had simply come alone to back up Yi Chun, then Zhou Yuntian wouldn't fear much. His only concern was if big figures from the Taishin sect were implicated. If that were the case, he would have to carefully weigh his options before killing Yi Chun. Even if he decided to kill Yi Chun, he would have to find another method. If no big figures from the Taishin sect were involved, then he, Zhou Yuntian, wasn't afraid of anything. After all, the Taishin sect would not deliberate with him, an elder of the Heavenly Net sect, over a stranger who had no relation to them. I act under the order of my sister, the true disciple of the Taishin sect, Jiang Yao, to protect Yi Chun. Anyone who opposes Yi Chun is opposing my sister, Jiang Yao. Lu Chan'er looked at Zhou Yuntian and declared aloud. At the same time, she took out an ancient-looking token and held it high. This ancient token was engraved with the mountains and clouds of the Taishan sect on the front and bore the words Taishan, Jiang Yao on the back. Hearing Lu Chan'er shout the name of Jiang Yao, many disciples from the Heavenly Net sect and Qingyun sect in the plaza exclaimed, Jiang Yao? Someone came to protect this Yi Chun under the orders of Jiang Yao of the Taishan sect. How does this Yi Chun know Jiang Yao? The fairy-like Jiang Yao actually cares so much about Yi Chun? What, exactly, is his relationship with Jiang Yao? In the eastern region of the Heavenly Wind Kingdom, among the disciples of the 36 sects, there were countless who admired and worshipped Jiang Yao, and many who secretly loved her. They had never heard of Jiang Yao being close to any man. Now, suddenly hearing that the girl on the eagle had come to protect Yi Chun under the orders of Jiang Yao, they were completely dumbfounded. They could not fathom that this Yi Chun, pursued by a mid-stage Spirit Sea realm powerhouse, with a vow to never rest until he was dead, could be connected with their admired and worshipped sister Jiang Yao. And apparently it was a very close relationship. This caused the hearts of many sect disciples to shatter. Taishan command. These sect disciples were utterly shocked by the name Jiang Yao, while Zhou Yuntian and the 8 great Spirit Sea realm powerhouses of Qingyun sect who stood in the air looked at the ancient token in Lu Chan'er's hand simultaneously. Upon seeing this ancient token, their eyes all flashed brightly. They directly recognized the token in Lu Chan'er's hand. This token was unmistakably the Taishan command, a unique token that only the Spirit Sea realm powerhouses of the Taishan sect could possess. Taishan command. This Yi Chun actually has the backing of a Spirit Sea realm powerhouse, and from the Taishan sect no less. Zhou Yuntian is untouchable, but so are the Spirit Sea realm powerhouses of the Taishan sect. This makes things difficult. Qingyun sect's sect master Luo Kuan exchanged glances with the other 7 elders, and silently communicated with each other through transmitted messages. Jiang Yao. Could it be the rumored prodigy who entered the Spirit Sea realm at just 16? Jiang Yao from the 36 sects? Upon hearing Lu Chan'er's words, Zhou Yuntian felt a sudden relief. As long as Yi Chen's matter wasn't linked to a big shot from the Taishan sect, he wasn't too concerned about a young Jiang Yao. If it were something else, I would have given that sister of yours, Jiang Yao, some face, but as Yi Chun and I have a vendetta of a killed son, even if Jiang Yao herself came today, I would still slay Yi Chun. Little girl, if you know what's good for you, stand aside. Otherwise, if I accidentally harm you, don't say I didn't warn you. Zhou Yuntian's thunderous voice carried over to Lu Chan'er, and at the same time, the true qi he had retracted into his body surged out once again. Lu Chan'er saw that Zhou Yuntian still intended to act even after she had taken out the Taishan command. Her face flushed with anger, and with a swoosh, she drew the bright treasure sword from behind her. Harm me? Just try. Yi Chun isn't afraid of you, and neither am I, Lu Chan'er. Hold it. Just as Zhou Yuntian was about to make a move, and just when Yi Chun was preparing to tell Lu Chan'er not to interfere, Qingyun sect's sect master Luo Kuan suddenly stepped forward, standing between Yi Chun and Zhou Yuntian. What, brother Luo Kuan? Are you trying to stop me, too? Zhou Yuntian's eyebrows raised in anger as he glared at Luo Kuan. How could I dare? Brother Zhou, you seek vengeance for your son, and we wouldn't presume to stop you, Luo Kuan said with a fist and palm salute to Zhou Yuntian. However, brother Zhou, given that the little girl has taken out the Taishan command, if you really strike down Yi Chun directly, our Qingyun sect would be in a difficult position with that Spirit Sea realm friend from the Taishan sect. Brother Zhou, with your mid-Spirit Sea realm cultivation, forcefully killing a true Qi realm youth would tarnish your reputation even if it were spread out. How about this, brother Zhou? Send a few of your true Qi realm disciples to fight Yi Chun. If Yi Chun can survive against your true Qi realm disciples, then it's a testament to his abilities. If Yi Chun dies at the hands of your disciples, it means he was not skilled enough, and that friend from the Taishan sect presumably won't blame us either. Brother Zhou, how does that sound? Luo Kuan's words clearly meant to prevent Zhou Yuntian from acting directly. Lu Chaner's presentation of the Taishan command had failed to shake Zhou Yuntian but appeared to have shocked the Qingyun sect's members enough that they felt compelled to speak on behalf of Yi Chun. Do the rest of you feel the same? Zhou Yuntian then turned his gaze to the other 7 elders beside Luo Kuan. Although he was not afraid of Luo Kuan's interference, if the 8 Great Spirit Sea Realm powerhouses of Qingyun sect were to stop him, then directly killing Yi Chun would become troublesome. Brother Zhou, the sect master's words are our collective sentiment. We hope Brother Zhou will give us some consideration. Zhou Yuntian looked at Luo Kuan who stood in his path, and then at the other 7 elders, his gaze flickering. Suddenly, Luo Kuan's voice transmitted directly into Zhou Yuntian's ears. Brother Zhou, this matter involves a Spirit Sea Realm disciple from the Taishan sect, and we don't take it as lightly as you do. We must show her some courtesy. My earlier suggestion, if the disciple you send ends up killing Yi Chun, then the matter is settled. Even if Jiang Yao comes looking for trouble later, we can lay the blame on those individuals. Surely, without our direct involvement, she wouldn't really come after us with a violent intent, would she? At the same time, we can also take this opportunity to observe Yi Chun. I always have the feeling that Yi Chun seems to possess hidden moves. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to directly rush to Qingyun sect like this. Even if Yi Chun reveals his hidden moves and isn't killed by your disciples, we will at least have learned of his techniques. Can he really hide them forever? Once he's alone, killing him wouldn't be difficult for you, Brother Zhou. Brother Zhou, please consider my words. Communicating through consciousness is a method only Spirit Sea Realm powerhouses possess. Nobody else overheard the conversation between Luo Kuan and Zhou Yuntian. However, Yi Chun, looking up, turned his gaze toward the Qingyun sect's sect master Luo Kuan and the other 7 elders who suddenly stood up for him. His eyes flickered as if he had perceived something. Good, good, good. Zhou Yuntian sighed heavily, as if he was truly unable to act due to the intervention of the 8 Great Spirit Sea Realm masters from Qingyun sect. Today, I will give face to Brother Luo Kuan and not personally take action. However, vengeance for my son must be exacted. Jin Shenlai, come forth and resolve this matter with Yi Chun for me. As Zhou Yuntian's voice faded, a youth dressed in the garb of a disciple of the Heavenly Net sect leaped out from the crowd in the plaza, taking a stand. Zhou Yuntian then turned his attention to Lu Chaner. Little girl, don't say I didn't give due consideration to your Taishan command. I won't personally make a move, so if Yi Chun dies at the hands of my disciple, nobody else is to blame. Lu Chaner glanced at Zhou Yuntian, who was blocked in the sky by 8 people from the Qingyun sect, and then at Jin Shenlai, who had flown out of the crowd, her eyebrows knitted. She asked Yi Chun, what should we do? Shall we strike against this person together first? Yi Chun smiled at Lu Chaner and said, Sister Chaner, just cover me. Leave this person to me. With those words, Yi Chun stepped toward Jin Shenlai. Yi Chun, Lu Chaner called out anxiously, longing to follow him. At that moment, Qingyun sect's sect master Luo Kuan stepped forward, appearing in front of Lu Chaner from the void. Smiling at her, he said, Since Brother Zhou has refrained from acting directly, this friend should also stay aside and watch for now. Lu Chaner looked at Luo Kuan, then at Zhou Yuntian, whose gaze was filled with dark clouds in the sky, and finally, she halted. More than the true Qi realm disciple, she needed to be wary of any sudden moves from Zhou Yuntian. Yi Chun, he's all yours. If things go awry, I'll step in to help you. Lu Chaner gently pinched her left hand with her right hand. On her left wrist, 2 silver bracelets suddenly started to emanate a faint glow that was difficult to detect.